Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. I am going to try another live stream. Last week, YouTube was just not playing along. Recently, in St. Paul, I think the strictest rent control initiative that was ever passed actually got voted through. It had 53% of the support, so it made it through. And here's the chaos that it's causing. This is an area where they don't have enough rentals, which is kind of most of the markets in the United States. And when we're seeing rent increases in 2020 and 2021 because of the pandemic and the eviction moratorium and the increase in costs as materials go up, wage inflation is happening. So it's costing owners more to maintain. We're seeing prices increase, so we're seeing rents increase. So the kind of normal reaction is to react in fear and go, we need rent control. In Washington State, we're seeing rents go up 20 to 40%. I use my binder strategy, which gets the tenants to request a rent increase. And even using that strategy, I'm still seeing over 20% increases at the tenant's request. So I can understand somebody that's saying, if rent is going up 100%, there needs to be some control put in place. In Washington State, one of the reasons I invest here is because there's actually a revised code of Washington that says it is illegal for there to be rent control in Washington State. Some cities like Seattle get kind of creative and they come up with some, to me, crazy sounding laws where it's like rent control. Things like it takes 6 months notice in order to initiate a rent increase. And if the tenant doesn't like that rent increase, then the owner has to pay for the tenant to move. Very close to rent control. But in St. Paul, they put in rent control that does something that most rent control in most states just doesn't do. And what it's going to do is it's really going to hurt renters. One of the things that a lot of people don't think about rent control is that it forces owners every year to do the maximum allowable increase. In other words, their rents will quickly fall behind, and then they won't be able to sell their property, or they'll run into all kinds of problems with just controlling cost versus income. There are people, like I've got a friend that has over 30 units, and it's been over 10 years since he's done rent increases on most of his tenants. He just finds good tenants, leaves the rent alone. If rent control was ever initiated where he's at, he would have to do increases every single year. So the one thing that rent control really usually doesn't hit is new builds. So let's take a state like California, where, and if I get the numbers right, it's because I don't live there. I moved out of there and won't go back. Told my mom if she wanted me at her funeral, she was going to have to come to Washington and die. So really don't want to go back. But rent control in California is 5% plus inflation with a cap of 10%. So you can do up to a 10% increase every year. New builds aren't affected by this. And I think there are some laws where it doesn't impact owner-occupied, small multifamily if you don't have a certain number of units or less. So really look into your local area. But this rent control initiative that was passed in St. Paul is a cap of 3%, which in most years doesn't keep up with inflation. The federal government's goal is to have at least 2 to 2.5% inflation every year. And this year, what they're admitting to is that it's 6%. I think it's kind of a bit more than that, as we're seeing prices of everything go up so much. But if inflation is 6% and you can only do a 3% increase, you are falling behind on rents. This rent control measure, including new builds, is really going to hurt people. If there's not enough rentals, so there were actually projects under, not under contract, that's when you're buying, but underway, started, that have been paused. The contractors, the investors said that they are pausing, reevaluating, reimagining, and rethinking if they even want to invest in St. Paul. Because as an investor, you're going to invest on yield. And if you limit your ability to get a rent increase that's going to make the yield worth it, you're going to invest somewhere else. They actually were warned before the vote. People came in and lobbied saying, look, if you put rent control in, contractors are going to stop their projects, and worse, not look at doing projects in the future. So if you limit the supply in a place that already has strong demand, rents will go up, the maximum every time. Worse than that, property prices will go up. Most investors that I talk to say things like, I want to invest in a red state. I want to invest where the laws are landlord friendly. And the one time I've heard somebody say they want to invest where it's tenant friendly was Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone was on Bigger Pockets, season 2 episodes. I forget the first one. I think the second one was episode 250. And in one of his interviews, he actually said, I like to invest in blue states because blue states limit building. And if you limit building, you're going to increase demand, and increased demand means higher prices. So he's investing for appreciation. But if we're hoping investors will build new rentals, or owners will upgrade and maintain rentals, there has to be the incentive for them to want to do it. And if you can't increase your rents to even keep up with inflation, where's the incentive to invest there? So even after being warned, the response of the people in support of the bill said they're bluffing. Contractors wouldn't do that. Well, it passed and contractors stopped their projects. So it's actually happening now. So here's the opportunity. And this is not the way that I invest and not the way that I suggest investing. Investing in rental properties in St. Paul right now is definitely not going to be a cash flow situation. You are not going to be able to generate cash flow if inflation is outpacing your rent increases. But there are investors who strictly invest for appreciation. And I've seen some of the numbers that people run where you can lose a couple $1,000s a month, but gain millions when you go to sell. And it's, in my opinion, it's gambling on like a really high level. But when rent control goes in, property prices go up. Look at the appreciation in places like California, New York, San Francisco, San Diego saw 30% appreciation last year. That type of appreciation doesn't happen everywhere. Well, as a national average, we saw 16% appreciation. Here in my state, I think the average was 24. Seattle saw over 30%. So the stricter the laws are, the more appreciation, because it's harder to build. Think about being an investor. Most of the people who watch my content are looking at buying their first or buying their next rental. Not that many of us are looking at buying land and building. The time horizon on that, the permitting involved, the fact that cities can change their mind on what they let you do. I have a friend who is trying to build, he's got some acreage. He was going to build a duplex, a single family house, and an ADU, got approval, spent thousands of dollars. And then the city came back and said, this is 4 or 5 months later, we've changed our mind. You can no longer build the duplex. So think of the thousands of dollars he was out. And then the city just changes their mind. So planning out building is risky. Not just that you might make money, but the city might change their mind. Worked out for my friend. The pandemic happened, prices went up, so he put everything on hold. Eventually the city came back and said, hey, it's okay, you can build your duplex. But that's a huge risk to take as an investor when you could just buy rentals that already exist, which increases the demand for existing structures, and increased demand when you have limited supply means prices are going to go up. Which points out one of the things I say on my channel a lot: the longer you wait to buy, the more you're going to pay. So I'm going to say hello to people who've logged in. Appreciate you stopping by. So, hi, howdy. Another Dion. I'll be the other Dion. Howdy, Larry. The stars have aligned technologically well. I need to find somebody's 10-year-old to come in here and show me how this stuff works. I looked at everything that I did for this live stream that I did last week, and it all looks the same. Every single box was checked the same. No idea why notifications didn't go out last week. For this much time, I thought it was because the title of the video had rent control in it, and I thought that might be a video YouTube doesn't want to promote, but I think that was overthinking it. Pretty sure it was just a technical error. Julie, how do I time manage? I don't have the best memory. I have some memory issues. So I have reminders on my phone. Every event that I need to do goes on the calendar. There is a formula that I'm going to study that a friend introduced me to on the setting priorities of tasks. And I don't have all of the details. It was the A, B, C, D, E method. And A was the ones you have to get done before you go home, no matter what, all the way down to D was delegate and E was eliminate. And so there's a structure in there that sounded kind of like what I do. Figuring out what tasks take the most amount of time has been my easiest way to time delegate, because there are things at my job where it would take 20 hours a week for me to figure out the schedule. And I couldn't find somebody that could understand the schedule to do it. It would take 6 months to teach somebody how to do the schedule. When I finally took the time to do that, took literally 6 months to teach someone how to do that, and I freed up that 20 hours, that gave me 20 hours to grow the business. It's the same thing with rentals. I can go and I can paint a room. I can go and tape off everything. I can go and buy the paint. I can go and paint. I could do the staging. I could do the cleanup to save $1,000, $2,000, depending on how many square foot, right? But how much time is that actually involved? When does it make sense to actually hire that out? And I make jokes about being lazy, so the lazy person would want to hire somebody. Well, the lazy person also likes money, because the more money you have to invest, the faster you can make work optional. So I look at things like taking care of the lawn, things like going and fixing a sink, fixing a closet door. I look forward to having work for handymen so that I can keep them employed, so that they're willing to work for me in the future. So time management comes down to, for me, when it comes to work and self-managing, figuring out the tasks that I can automate and setting expectations early. Once I've had a couple of interactions with a tenant when it comes to an emergency at their house, which I like to break it down as fire, flood, or blood, means get a hold of me now, right? Those are the three things. Anything after that is an email or can happen during work hours, Monday through Friday. Once I've had a couple of interactions with the tenant and I understand that they have a concept of what's super trivial and what's important, I'll usually just put them in contact with my handyman. So the handyman knows to run by me anything that's going to cost more than a couple $100, but small things they can just take care of and then bill me later. So when a tenant has a problem, it's really not even a me issue. It's only something I have to deal with in the beginning when I'm setting that up. But now it's probably when I'm going to try to think of the last time a tenant got a hold of me for a problem. It's been months. I think recently the handyman reached out and said, "Hey, I'm going to fix a leaky shower at this one unit." And I was like, "Great, send me the bill when you're done." So 2 texts for the whole issues for the last couple of months. It wasn't that way in the beginning. My first couple of years trying to self-manage properties, it felt like I was spending 20 hours a week to manage one tenant, because I didn't know how to set expectations. I didn't know how to have systems in place. Um, I was working with the Bigger Pockets boot camp. I'm a teaching assistant in that this week. One of the questions was, how do you get your contractors? And I don't have a contractor. That's not something I've ever had to do. I use the Thumbtack app to get a contractor currently that's available that gives me the best bid for whatever project I'm on. But I'm not constantly doing rehabs or flipping or anything like that. So I guess if I was doing it more often, I probably would have one. But just self-managing my own units, the Thumbtack app and having handyman is enough to be able to get tasks taken care of when they pop up. Howdy, Daniel. Larry. There's a comedy TV show that I like called The IT Crowd. Their favorite saying is, "Did you turn it off and on again?" Works for me. So one of the things I kind of want to do, and I probably should have titled this video this, so I might change it later. But I want to go over the timeline on, like, the chronology of how real estate makes you a millionaire, and how long it took to get to 1 million, and then how long it took to get to 2 million. And usually when I make videos like that, I like to do some research and get like a chart to make sure everything's right. But what I want to do is, as an investor, kind of go off the top of my head without thinking or prior planning. Just, if the question came up with somebody and if somebody came to me with a question, how long does it take to get to $1 million as a real estate investor? There are ways to do it faster. There are ways that don't rely so much on cash flow, like the Burr method, or flipping to generate capital. But just as a buy and hold investor, I'm going to break down the timeline of from what was my net worth when I started and where it's at now, and then kind of the timeline of how that happened. And before I do it, I really want to say net worth is a fictitious number that really doesn't mean anything. It's on the information that you give a lender when you're qualifying for loans. But when I first started, I was underwater on a house. I owed $138,000. It was worth about 100. This was around 2009, 2010. The housing market had crashed. So I was one of those people that bought a house 100% financed. They even financed in the closing costs. because before 2008, they weren't verifying income. They were doing 100% loans. They weren't even doing, 75 or 80% LTV. So my type of loan was one of the loans that got people in trouble. Luckily, when the interest rate went up, because I had an adjustable rate mortgage, I was literally one of the people that caused the housing crash because of taking loans like that. When my interest rates went up, I was able to refinance. I had to refinance out to take out equity to pay off my ex's portion of the equity in the divorce, which I hate even saying. But so I refinanced up to, it was at 150 when I did that. I had paid it down to 138. So this was when I decided to start investing. I had found out about a little over $300,000 in credit card debt and debt in my name that I didn't know about until the divorce, and negotiated with lenders. Didn't know this was a thing until this happened, but I negotiated with lenders and got that down to 89,000. If you have significant debt that you're struggling with, if you call your creditors and you say, look, this is really out of control, I'm considering bankruptcy, they might take a lower amount. Most of the creditors that I work with took 25 or 30% of the actual value that was owed. There was like three things that they were like, nope, this is the bill, or we'll take you to court. But I got it down to 89,000. So my net worth, I was upside down on the house by over 30,000, and I had 89,000 in debt that I needed to take care of. So starting from negative net worth. I was a police officer till 2008, making like $21 an hour. Wasn't really a great job, but it was a small town. When I got laid off from the police department, I went to become a driver at Oak Harbor Freight Lines, making over $100,000 a year. And I thought, oh yeah, life's great. I'm back on my feet. Best paying job I think I'd ever had up until that point. And then they went on strike. So that job went away. And right after that, I became a truck driving instructor at a CDL school, making $17 an hour. So negative net worth, not making a lot of money, bad debt to income ratio. That's where I started. Now it's 11 years later, coming up on 11 years later, and net worth about 2 months ago crossed 2 million. So I'm going to look at the questions really quick and then break down how that timeline looked to go from negative net worth, bad debt to income ratio, and not making a lot of money to where I'm at today. Andrew. Howdy, Andrew. Any chance for a video series on how to establish self-management systems to be made in the future? Kind of step-by-step guide, so my crayon-eating brain will get it. That is the way the video would have to be for me to understand it too. So I don't know if I could do a series or one good instructional video on, because I have one on how I self-manage. I'll send that to you, Andrew, in a link, and then tell me what you think is missing. Maybe I'll watch it again and see if there's a more detailed version of that I can do. I did a video on how I self-manage for the one rental at a time course, and then I did one for my channel. I'll have to look through it and see what's missing. Karen, howdy. Dion, do you have a video about setting expectations with tenants? I liked that if it's not a flood, fire, flood, or blood quote. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I heard that somewhere. I think it's a Ken McElroy quote. I watch a lot of his content, and I think I've heard him say that, and I've adopted it, and I just literally use that sentence when I'm talking to tenants. Fire, flood, or blood. That's when you call me. Do I have a video about setting expectations with tenants? I don't think I do. So that is a great idea. Thank you. So Ace, howdy. George or Jorge, any interest in short-term rentals? Kind of. They make significantly more money than long-term rentals do, but they take more time, or they take a property manager, which I haven't made that step yet. Most of my rentals are small multifamily. I have one single family house, and then I have one triplex that is really a house and a duplex. If either of those houses become empty, I'm probably going to try short-term rentals just to see how the time that it takes changes. I know a good cleaning company, so the tenant switch is not what I'm worried about. It's shopping, prepping, staging. How often would the tenant turn over? I would probably do rent to traveling nurses before I do like straight up Airbnb or VRBO. But my goal would be, I don't want short-term tenants next to long-term tenants in a small multifamily. That's why I'm looking for the single-family houses to be that way. And I say it all the time, I'm very lazy. I like putting a tenant in place. Part of the binder strategy is to get the tenant to request a rent increase. A part of the binder strategy is to get the tenant to request a longer lease. At the end of it, I usually say something like, and I just did this a couple weeks ago, this is a pretty big rent increase, and I get it. You're getting a good deal. You're still below area averages and everything, but to protect yourself for next year, we could do a 2-year lease. And the tenant said, yeah, let's do a 2-year lease. Then you can't raise the rent next year. So I'm locked in for 2 years at that new rate, but it's even less time that I'll be, next year I won't have to either go do the binder strategy or re-sign a lease or anything like that. Um, and I think I've heard the math with short-term rentals that you make about 3 times as much in rents, but your expenses are at least twice as much. So you make more money, but your expenses go up. So I'll dig into that more when I do it. And if I ever do short-term rental, will absolutely be a video series on here's how I did it. I know I talked with my friend who has it. If you go with Airbnb and VRBO and you have it set up where you have to approve the person, it wasn't as good as if you had it set up for auto approve. There was some reason. So I want to make a video on if you're getting into short-term rental, here's a decision you need to make, here's the possible outcomes, and why you want to look at it this way. So that's one I'm going to research before I make that video. Andrew, thanks. I didn't know about the 1 million mark until a year later when I went to make a video about what came first, $1 million in debt or $1 million in net worth. And I was doing the math and I was like, wow, that was over a year ago. The 2 million one I found out because I was looking at doing a cash out refinance. And when you do a refinance, they have you break down every single mortgage you have, the net worth of, or the estimated value of all of those properties and all of your assets. And I was like, wow, if I sold everything and walked away and paid capital gains tax and paid 6% agent fees, I would have just over $2 million. So that's, to me, net worth is sold everything, paid the taxes, paid the fees, and walked away. What would be in your hand? It's a weird feeling coming from a guy that was making $17 an hour 10 years ago. Julie, we are on the same timeline. That's why I like listening to you. Awesome. Cool. Tom, I'm house hacking a duplex. Houses near me are about 200 to 250 for a single family house. So I need 50K for down payment. Second, house hack is an option for the smaller down payment. The income snowball is a good way to do that. One of the things that made it a little easier to save the money for a down payment is lenders will want you to have a down payment, money for closing costs, money for immediate repairs, and reserves. So that kind of stacks up. You don't just need $20,000, you need $20,000 plus closing, plus reserves, plus, so it just adds up. For your reserves, lenders will look at your retirement accounts. 50% of the value of a retirement account can count as a reserve. You don't have to tap it, you don't have to take it out. You just have to show the lender that you have it. And then that's less money that you need to save up in cash when it goes to buy that next property. And then, as much as we encourage people to buy now, buy soon, the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to be. That doesn't mean we're in a rush. The reason I say that is because I want to fight the sentence when people say, I'm going to wait for the crash, or I'm going to wait for the correction, because that's not a good thing. But I'm waiting till I have the down payment. I'm waiting till I have the closing costs. I'm waiting till I find the right deal. Those are sentences I'm okay with. Currently, and I think I said this in a live stream once before or on Mike's channel, I've seen a couple of deals. I made a couple of offers, and I always want an offer when I make the offer to go through, but I was kind of hoping that they didn't on some level, because I've been saving a down payment and looking at a cash out refinance on a paid off house because I want my next property to cost more than $1 million. Something I say on my channel often is, I wish my properties cost more, as long as the return scaled with it. Because a 10% return, if it cost me $100,000 to get the property, or a 10% return if it cost me $250,000 to get the property, I would rather have that. The larger property appreciates on a larger scale because it's a multiple of what I invested. The principal pay down is bigger. It's just, everything is bigger. So I've been saying I want to buy $1 million property, so I'm saving up that money. So it's been a struggle, including time in the equation. So if you're house hacking, hopefully that means you reduced your housing cost or you eliminated them. And instead of spending that money and increasing other things in your life, that has increased your savings rate to get you to that 50,000. So in the timeline, when I was at that at the beginning stage of a lot of bad debt and not making a lot of money, it was 2 years before I bought the first duplex. And that was because I had to wait to get rental income on my tax returns so that when I go to buy the next place, the rents from both properties would be considered in my debt to income ratio. It was a very long 2 years, but I was saving that whole time. And then now the house cash flowed or reduced my rent or my mortgage payment so that I could save faster for the next one. The first 6 years, it was almost 2 years between transactions. After 6 years, it really starts to speed up. The income snowball kicks in. And that's where it's kind of nice to have a mentor when you're starting. How does real estate work? But YouTube University is really good at providing step by step. Find the channels you identify with. Watch One Rental at a Time, The Lumberjack Landlord, April Crossley. Find the channels that talk about a regular person working a regular job that made work completely optional by investing, and just follow the instructions basically that we're giving out all the time. It's when the income snowball kicks in that life is hard. Picking when to refinance, when to home equity line of credit, what asset class to pursue next. You start saving up money faster than you can find the deals for. So what do you do with the money? My daughter has said some amazing things. Two of them that really stood out. But the first one is, it's really hard to make a decision when both outcomes are positive. It's almost easier to get out of bad debt than it is to start investing, because to get out of bad debt, we have this number and we have interest rates. We can look at the charts and go, if I put money here, that number gets smaller. My goal is to get that number down to zero. Kind of easy to just follow that chain. When you start investing, what asset class do you like? Short term versus long term, residential versus commercial, local versus distance. Do you want to create capital with flipping, or do you want to generate cash flow with buy and hold? Those are the really hard decisions. So I think in the beginning, if you can get into house hacking and you can figure out your strategy, those first few years are actually probably the most stressful, but they're the easiest because you have time to learn. Once the income snowball kicks in, it's like drinking from a fire hose. You need to figure out what to do with your money, and it starts happening faster. That's where I think a mentor makes more sense, because it's really hard to find a mentor by just saying, hey, somebody teach me, because I wouldn't want to teach somebody how to do the Burr method. I haven't done it. I wouldn't want to teach somebody how to buy a mobile home park. I haven't done it. I've bid on some or put some offers in, but I haven't done it. Right. So when you're starting out, it's kind of so broad, but once you have your strategy picked, it's a little easier to find somebody who's done what you're trying to do. You have a base knowledge on how things work, and then you can actually go to them and say, look, here's my situation. I'm trying to do what you did. What would be my next step? And then the discussion actually makes sense. I lost my spot here. Okay. And then Tom, what are some strategies for saving faster, getting into property for less? Thanks for your videos. Thank you. So using retirements as a reserve is step one. House hacking is the biggest one for me. If you can reduce or eliminate your largest expense, that has a bigger impact than eliminating anything else that you have money on. When you're first starting out, I don't recommend what I'm about to say. What I'm about to say is for somebody who has one or two rentals already and has the basics down. But if you haven't done anything yet, don't listen to me. I stopped contributing to retirement accounts and I emptied them out. I contribute for the match, and even doing that bothers me, because money in a retirement account, and I have a video called No Retirement Accounts, isn't paying you now. It isn't gaining appreciation on 4 times what you invested. It isn't getting tenants to do principal pay down. You're not getting the tax benefits of a retirement account. Suck when you compare them to real estate. Your retirement accounts are hoping that taxes are less in the future, and you're hoping that you retire in a lower tax bracket. And it's counterintuitive. It makes sense if somebody has no way of investing, because it's that pay yourself first. That money goes away without you thinking about it into a retirement account, so it will be there, and it's better than nothing. But once you have 1 or 2 rentals and you know how to find a deal, how to calculate yield, how to find and screen tenants, how to get a strong lease, how to get insurance bids, how to work with contractors and get the right estimate for something. And you have all those basics down, something in your brain will just click and you'll go, it makes absolutely no sense for me to put any money in a retirement account because I can make work optional now. It can pay me now. It can get all of these other benefits that I listed out. So, depending on your situation, Tom, I don't know if you're confident in your ability to invest and know what your yield would be. And legal caveat: this is YouTube University, never meant for financial advice. I am not a paid fiduciary, but that's what I did. I used to max out. I put as much money as possible in the retirement account. My original goal was 20 years Marine Corps, 20 years law enforcement, and then retire. Right, that was 2 retirements with pensions. Plans change. Now the idea of being stuck working for a pension that can go bankrupt and can pay percentages of what's left, like it's happening with some of the municipalities we have, uh, I'm glad I shifted gears. And other ways to save, there are some good ones. Um, Focus on any bad debt that you have that's at 6% or higher, whatever you can do to get rid of it, because that's a guaranteed return of 6% or better. And you can't even get a guaranteed return on your investing strategy if like when I buy a property, my goal is a 10% or better cash on cash return. That doesn't mean I'm always going to get it. So far it's 100%, but the next one could blow up in my face. But if I pay off debt, when I had that $89,000 in debt that was above my head when I first started thinking of investing, I looked at all of those, and I am going to be making a video, but not today, on how you know how to get rid of bad debt and invest at the same time, and how I did that, like step by step, how I got through that. Um, but it's easier to save if you can eliminate those high interest rates. So hopefully you don't have any that are that high. Um, Interest rates that are below 6%, you can allocate money to them, but you can make more money investing at a higher return than paying that off. So make the minimums, don't ever have late payments. But I wouldn't focus on paying off bad debt if it's at a lower interest rate than what you can get as a return until you get the income snowball, and then you can just direct a bunch of money to pay off the debt all at once. Julie, got 2 traveling nurse units. Let me know if you want your experience. I will definitely reach out. Yeah, I've got some friends who do it, and I think he's turning traveling nurse to buy the room Airbnb, um, or I've got that backwards. It's one or the other. But yeah, I'm definitely going to reach out. Cool. My Serenity. How did you find the travel nurse? So there is a website, and I don't have it memorized, but if you just Google traveling nurses, that website will pop up. And sometimes it's more specific to your location. So there is probably a big thing, and Julie could probably answer that in the chat, or probably already has. But if I want to advertise to someone on the base close to me, I call that base as MWR, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. They don't handle the housing, but they'll know who does on that installation. I would go to a hospital close to you, find out that they will have the information on traveling nurses there, because that might be more area specific to you. They might talk about the demand, or they might talk about something that would only matter in your location. Jonathan, howdy. Yeah, glad I got it working too. Thanks. Yen, howdy. Don, retirement accounts for financing considerations. Must they be IRA or 401k? Do lenders consider a pension that you aren't drawing from yet? I would have to ask a lender on that one. I haven't looked into the pension thing yet. They look at the reserves, 50% of a retirement account, because it's 50% because if you paid the penalty and you were in a high tax bracket, if you emptied them out, you would still have 50% left in most cases. It's hard for a lender to look at pension as a reserve. They might look at it as debt to income ratio, but I wouldn't assume that they would until you were collecting monthly payments. But talk to a lender about that. That's a good question directly to them, because it's kind of specific. Invest to wealth. Howdy. My serenity. I'm leaving my job and plan to cash out my 401k, pay the penalty, taxes, and invest in cash flowing real estate. Any suggestions? If it's possible, I would try to get 1 or 2 rentals under my belt before I took any money out of a 401k, if it's possible. But like I said, there are some basic systems that you need to figure out. How do you make offers? How do you negotiate with, how do you uh, secure funding? How do you find tenants? How do you calculate your yield? Like all the real basic stuff that needs to just kind of be second nature before you put something at risk. It's kind of the same way as I wouldn't take out a home equity line of credit or a cash out refinance on my primary residence to buy rentals unless I had several, and I'm confident in my ability, because competence comes from confidence, or confidence comes from competence. It goes both ways. Um, Once you have confidence in your ability to get your yield, that's probably when I would look at doing it. Howdy, Cody, Kenny, thank you. Jonathan, so what number really means something if it's not net worth? So the question I would ask is, what does net worth mean? Because for net worth, for me to actually use the 2 million that I hit, I would have to sell everything, pay all the taxes, pay all the fees, and then have a bunch of money. And what do you do with money? I'd just be reinvesting it anyways. So for me, it's your freedom number, which is money that comes in every month that you don't have to sell your life for. When you have investments that pay you, another reason why I don't like retirement accounts or stocks. And if I was going to run a business, I would want it to be a business that had grown to the point where somebody else was running it, so I don't have to work there. Because if you're working for a job, if you need a job to meet your monthly expenses, you're still not free. We're not free until our passive income, even if it's from properties, which isn't really 100% passive, but it's in the passive income column with the IRS. Once that passes your cost of living expenses with a comfortable margin, that's the number that matters to me. So I usually ask people, what is your freedom number? And I've done that on a couple of videos. I did it on Michael Zuber's channel, and I have 2 winners who have not reached out to me to collect their audiobook. I don't have their names memorized. One was Isa, and I forget the other one. Most days I'm lucky to remember my name. So I'll have to look in the Facebook group, 3 Amigos of Phi. There's a post in there on the winners of the book. And my brain completely squirreled on what I was talking about. Number that really matters. Yep, right. How much money is coming in every month that you don't have to work for? That's the number that matters. And I'm very transparent on my channel. It's not bragging, because I talk about when I was super poor, and I talk about where I'm at now. And when I talk about where I'm at now, it almost sounds surreal, because it's numbers I never would have thought that I would know somebody who made. So my goal is to get everybody started on the path that's watching this right now, to where in a few years you're either there now or you're going to get there, and then you can share the information with people. And it's one of those touchy-feely sentences that I have, that as a former Marine, or as a Marine, it feels really weird to say. I think the world is a better place when people have jobs they want instead of jobs they have to do. And if we can get more people to financial freedom, then we can all pick jobs that we like. I was able to found a nonprofit that does job placement assistance, literally spend my time helping people find jobs in transportation, not driving trucks. I enjoy that. I wouldn't be able to do that if I needed a job where I had to have a job to make money. And so how many other people are going to be able to reach freedom and then do things like, I've considered, there's a playhouse here in a town close to where I'm at. I think I'm going to go in and audition for some roles and be in a play. And I've never acted in my life. I've never taken any acting classes or anything. I just think it would be fun. And if I had to work, I couldn't go do that. Talking about overshare, huh? Where'd that come from? So, Cody, here we go. My Serenity, hit the like button. Thank you. I appreciate that. Evolve Properties. One of these days I'll watch from the beginning, but not today. Today, 2.9 speed to catch up. Yeah, I get that. I like these kind of conversations because people are going to ask questions that bring up things that I wouldn't know to talk about. But when I take in content, it's at least at 1.5% or 1.5 speed on YouTube, so you can kind of get through it. Um, I can't think and talk fast enough for it to be to be good on regular speed. Julie, furnished finder for traveling nurses. So furnished finder, is that a website? Furnished finder. Cool. My Serenity. Thanks. Jimena. Hola, ¿cómo está? So educational. Thank you. My Serenity. Grateful for you. Thank you. Cody. Dion, I was wondering if you could go through the stages of your cash flow growth, like 0 to 2K, 2 to 5K, 5K, and how you felt through each stage and what it was like saving for the next deal. I can kind of do that at the same time as I was doing the net worth thing. So from the start, I had a lot of bad debt. I was making $17 an hour. It was upside down on my house. Bad debt to income ratio. So I moved from my house into an apartment, rented out the house. The mortgage on the house was like $1,088, and so I moved into an apartment that cost $1,500 a month. So my housing expenses went up for 2 years, but I worked a ton of overtime in the beginning at the school. One of the reasons I've been demoted down to company president and part owner of the company now is because I used to work 60 hours a week every week. And I actually played a game called World of Warcraft and sold things online to save money. So my savings came from work and gaming. I talked about oversharing, right? So for those first 2 years, I was raising 3 kids. I was working a ton of hours. I tried to work weird shifts so that I was home in the evenings with my kids. There was a period of time where my daughters didn't think I had a job because I was there all evening, but I would be gone when they were sleeping because our work started at like 5 in the morning, and then I would work shifts around them. Those 2 years were rough, but it was when I found out about house hacking. About halfway through that, I started looking. About 1 year into saving, I thought I'm going to start learning the market. And I was looking at single family houses and I couldn't find any. Every single family house I found, the mortgage would have been more than mine. And I had a tenant in there. The first year, rent was, I was getting $1,000 in rent. So mortgage was $1,088. My rent was $1,000. I had no cash flow and I was losing money because of saving for CapEx, repairs, vacancy. Like I was running it all wrong. That first year sucked. And I realized I can't find single family houses that cash flow. And somewhere on a Bigger Pockets forum, I read about getting small multifamily. So duplex, triplex, fourplex, same lending options as a single family. And back then in the dinosaur days, you can actually use conventional loans with lower down payments. Now, if you're going to do small multifamily, FHA is 3.5% across the board for all 4 types, single family up to fourplex. Conventional for single family, it will be 3% if you don't own a house or haven't owned a house for 3 years. It'll be 5% if you do own a house. But when you go to duplex, most lenders go up to 15%, even for owner occupied. So since it was early on, I was able to get my duplex with a 5% down conventional loan. I wanted to do some type of down payment because I kind of learned my lesson with the first house. My first house, I did a 100% financing first time home buyer deal they wrapped closing costs into the loan. So I was immediately underwater on the thing. And then when I did there was some equity over years, I did a refinance to pull out equity to pay my extra portion of the loan, of the equity in the property. So I even went further underwater when the housing market crashed. And I didn't want to do that again. So I didn't want to use my VA loan. I didn't want to do 100% financing. I used a conventional 5% down for the duplex. So at 2 years, the first year I lost a bunch of money on the house. I was paying for an apartment, which was expensive. No idea why that made me laugh. It's just, it was a sucky time. But at about the 2-year mark, I had a tenant in the house paying $1,400. And so it was cash flowing. I was actually setting aside $200 a month for repairs and vacancy and almost making $200 a month in profit. I had moved into a duplex right at that 2 years, reduced my housing cost from $1,500 down to $300. So that $1,200 I just immediately allocated right to the savings. So at 2 years, my savings, I was able to actually kind of back off the overtime a little bit, not a lot, and still save as much or more money, because $1,200 a month when you're making $17 as your base pay is a lot of money. So house hacking had a huge impact for me. It took 2 years to get to the next duplex. That duplex, when I first purchased it, it didn't cash flow very well. Well, it got my 10% cash on cash return. Now that duplex is making over a 20% cash on cash return because I purchased it as a 2-1-2-1 side by side, but it's actually a 3-1-3-1 side by side. So it's now rented out as 2 3-bedroom units, but purchased at 2-bedroom unit prices. So the returns over, I think I'm cash flowing 1,600 after all expenses and after all setting aside for that one property. It's probably my best purchase. All of that money went to saving. So 2 years in to buy duplex, 2 years in to buy first cash flowing investment property, less than 2 years to buy the next duplex. I wanted to buy 3-plex or 4-plex, but saving the down payment was taking me years. And so a down payment, because if you're not going to owner occupy, the lenders I'm working with wanted 20% down or 25% down. So 2 years to save 20%. It got easier because of the cash flow, the reduced housing expense. So at 4 years, I had the single family house and then 2 duplexes. 2 years later, so it was 3 duplexes. At the 3rd duplex, so I had 4 properties, single family house and 3 duplexes. They used to let you have 4 mortgages in your name. Most lenders now will let you go up to 10, but in 2014-15, they would let you go up to 4. So once I got to 4, I focused on the single family house. I took every penny of cash flow over time, still from online gaming, paid off that single family house. It took a year. That's the power of the income snowball. The house had been paid down to $121,000. It was at $138 when I first started. This principal pay down over the years had gotten it down to $121. Start slow, gets paid off faster later. But I just dumped every extra penny of anything into that. Once it was paid off, the cash flow from the house being paid off and the 3 duplexes with me house hacking was $2,700 a month in profit. When I was a police officer, I was taking home $1,300 every 2 weeks. So my cash flow at about the 7 to 8 year mark was more than what I was making when I was a police officer just from the rentals. So that's where financial freedom came in. Over the next year, I saved all of the money and purchased a 4-plex. So it was about the 8 to 9 year mark where I purchased a 4-plex. And that was the transaction that took me over $1 million in net worth, but I didn't find out until year 10. Moving from the duplex into the 4-plex as a house hack, because I didn't have enough to do a 25% down on the 4-plex, was massive. That second house hack, anybody who's house hacking right now, think about the second house hack. If you are renting and you move into a duplex, you move in and you have the other side to rent. So I reduced my housing expense from 15 down to 300. But moving from the duplex to the 4-plex, the 4-plex cash flows. I have to rethink it now because I've done the binder method strategy with my tenants. But when I first moved in, it was making $1,700 a month in profit, which is great, right? I'm house hacking. I'm getting paid to live in my 4-plex. But now I got to rent out the second unit of the duplex I was in. So it went from costing me $300 a month to making me $800 a month. And the binder strategy was just used on that duplex now. And it is making 11. So it's 1,100 in profit now. So it's better now, but it was 800 when I moved out a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago. It hasn't even been that long. But 1,700 more at the 4-plex, 800 more at the duplex. That's $2,500 a month in cash flow change because I was willing to move from one unit to the other. That second house hack is something I recommend everybody get to at least 2. I'm still technically in the 4-plex. So I might house hack again in the next year or 2. We'll see. It depends on what deals pop up. At some point, it might make sense to buy a house and pay to live there and have a mortgage again. And when I do that, I'll be able to rent out the unit that I'm moving from. So it could possibly, like the lumberjack landlord did this, where his wife said, I think this is how he presented it, so I might get this wrong. His wife said we should buy a house and we should actually have our own house. And he said, okay, we'll stop house hacking as long as the house costs the same as what we can rent out the unit we're moving from. So still technically a net zero cost to move there. And if I do it, it might be that way. And then breakdown. So that was the first million in net worth happened during the transaction of buying the fourplex. So that was between the 9 and 10 year mark. Now I'm coming up on 11 years. And so 9 years to go from negative net worth to $1 million in net worth and cash flow enough to make work optional. At $2,700 a month, that's not financial freedom. It's kind of financial independence where work is optional. It's not comfortable. I lived that way most of my life, so I don't know why I would say that now. But once I moved to the fourplex and it was cash flowing and I had the duplex cash flowing, and the Joe Asamoah episode came out on Bigger Pockets about Section 8. So I had the house rented at $1,400, was terrible at setting my rents in the beginning. I didn't know the binder strategy. I was just doing a lot of things wrong. I've learned that since. But I called the housing authority and I said, I've got a house. It's coming available. My tenant inherited a house. It's one of my first tenant turnovers. And it went to 1,800. So now it's at 2,200. Because I've learned how to set my rents to just under the area average and keep my tenants happy. So cash flow now, and this is me just being transparent, throwing out numbers. Beginning of 2020 with the fourplex, so I had 11 units at that time. Cash flow was $89,000 a year. No, $86,000 a year. It was 86. Ending of 2021, it's $124,000 a year. I've added a duplex and a triplex since the fourplex, and I've done the binder method this year with almost all tenants. So from a guy that was making $17 an hour to $124,000 a year that comes in without having to get out of bed, plus still working, it's a big change. And this last one, looking at doing a cash out refinance, running the net worth calculator through the lender to see about doing the cash out refinance, $1.8 million in debt, a little over $4 million in property, or $4.4 million in property value. So it comes out after everything to about a little over 2 million in net worth. And I think it says, can you go what it felt? Was that the question? Wondering if you're through the stages of your cash flow going through growth. Okay, so stages. Yeah, and saving for the next deal just gets faster and faster and easier. Finding the deal becomes the challenge, and then finding a deal that's good is a challenge, but finding those great deals. Michael Zuber says, always buy the great deal, learn what good is in your area, and then buy the great deals. Narrowing that down, I put my purchasing on hold for the last 3 months. I have a friend who was buying a duplex, and I basically took her by the hand and walked her through the whole process. Looked at deals together, ran the numbers, set up. I was there for her inspection, helped her understand the appraisal, got it done, showing her how to place tenants. And I told her this was a deal I would buy. So I made the agreement with her that, because first deal, she's just terrified. And I said, look, if you're nervous, this deal we found is this good. You buy it. If you don't like it, if you fail, if somehow you can't do this, I'll buy it and give you every penny you have into it. So we're going to track her expenses. And then if we get to some point where she just says, I can't do this, because she's making over $1,000 a month in profit from basically month 2 of owning this place. I hope it works out for her, but hopefully her stress level is a little bit lower because I'll take the place if she doesn't want it. But now that that's done, I'm in hunting mode. So I'm offering a $500 reward for anybody who brings me a fourplex in the Pierce and Thurston counties that is townhome style side by side with a garage for each unit, somewhere between 1 million and 1.5 million. If I buy it, I will give you the money. So I make posts like that on Facebook too. So one of the powers of social media is when you know your buy box and what you're looking for, put out a thing saying, look, if somebody brings me a deal and it's worth it, I will give you some money, because it's totally worth finding the deal to give somebody that much money. Dion. I'll be the other Dion, but not today. Which, I should. This is going to be a horrible video. I'm actually going to be off screen for a few seconds. Okay. Sorry. Thanks for putting up with that. I just remembered that this came in the mail. I very rarely felt as complimented as when this showed up. So thank you. Which is great because it came to my work. So imagine the sarcasm level when that showed up. I lost where I was. Invest to wealth. Thank you. Cody. Sorry, I missed the first part with net worth. No worries. But at the end, I'm going to try to talk about what I started the video with, so that people that showed up late, and it's kind of hard. I know weekend live streams are probably the way to go, but Mike's handling Saturday really well. Matt's got Sunday really well, so I'm trying to do one during the evening. But get the East Coast, get the West Coast. Either somebody's going to be staying up really late, or somebody has to get off work early. So it's kind of a weird time frame. So I'm trying to make it work. Ace. Would you be willing to personally teach me how to do the numbers for duplexes here in Minnesota over video messenger? Let me put my email in the chat, reach out, try to schedule a call. I don't know your market, so I can't tell you where it's a good place to invest, what's a good neighborhood to avoid, what's a good neighborhood to want to invest in. I don't know the economic drivers. I don't know the multiple sources of tenants. I can tell you math. You're going to have, the best thing to do though is to figure out what the area average rents are for the number of bedrooms in the units of the places you're going to be looking at, because that's the metric I won't really have a good handle on. I've learned the rents in my market. But yeah, reach out. We'll set up a call. My Serenity. How do you escrow security deposits? Title company. So the title company, so this is how it's worked with me, is you go through the inspection, the appraisal, everything is done. Your house appraised at the right amount. So then it goes to title company, and the title company goes and does the math. What day of the month are you taking ownership? What will the prorated rents for the rest of that month that have already been collected be that will come to you in a check later? So as much of math as they can get done, they'll give you a number saying, bring in, wire this amount of money, or bring in a check, cashier's check for this amount of money, and then you go and you sign your documents. I always irritate title companies because I don't like wiring money. I will go to my bank, which has free cashier's checks, and I will drive it to their office. For some reason, it makes it take longer for them, but the scams with wiring, and somehow they know that when a transaction's happening, and I get emails almost exactly at the time when I'm closing on a property with the same letterhead and the same title saying, here's your wiring instructions. And I've gotten 2 or 3 different ones at the same time. So instead of calling and saying, all right, read the number to me, so I can verify I'm looking at the right email, I just take a check down there. A little, to me, safer. My kids would say, my over 30 is showing. You might want to tuck that back in. But title takes the deposits from the tenants and then gives it to you on a purchase. If you're talking about how do I escrow it when I get deposits, depends on your area. Some areas require that you have an interest-bearing checking account, because it used to matter when banks would pay 11% interest for a savings account, that your tenant's money, that deposit is their money. You're just holding on to it. It's not yours. So if there's any interest earned on that, that belongs to the tenant. At least that's the way the law works in California and in Washington, where I know investors at. But I just use an interest-bearing savings account. Your state may require that savings accounts are in a separate one from all of your other finances, and you basically label it a deposit account. I haven't seen one yet that requires an account per property or anything, just one account that has all of your deposits in it. Ace, gotta play Call of Duty. I tried New World. Not sure what I think yet. Too many bugs. And I usually only game when I can monetize it. Haven't figured that one out yet either. Greg, as always, great info. Thank you. A little twist on the retirement accounts. Rather than cash out, I'm lending from my retirement account. When I get tired of rentals, I can owner finance them too. Yes. So that's another step with the retirement accounts, is borrowing against it. And you're absolutely right. That's another valid use for them. asset-based lending too. So if you have a paid off car, you can take a loan out against that car to use it as a down payment. It's a loan, so that's going to impact your debt to income ratio. And some lenders will want the money to be seasoned. So you have to do the loan and then it sits in your account for a couple of months and then you're going to use it. But you can borrow against retirement accounts. You can borrow against brokerage accounts. You could just say, these are my stocks. It doesn't even have to be a retirement account and borrow against them. Um, Lenders are not all made the same. Check with each one to find out what they're comfortable with. Larry, I think you had said your single family house is lakefront. How did you find that property? Is it better to research which lake before researching which lakefront property? Yeah, there's some lakes I wouldn't want to. So here in Washington, there is a lake community called, it's either Clearwood or Clear Lake, but it is in the actual middle of nowhere. And I mean, it's 20 minutes to the closest stop sign when you leave this place. So if you really want seclusion, go for it. But if you want tenants who have to commute to work or whatever, it's not where I would invest. My property is in a housing community that is on the lake. It is the only property I have that's in an HOA, and it is one of the reasons why I will never own a property in an HOA again. So it has private boat launch, tennis courts, basketball courts, all of that kind of stuff. I was not an investor when I bought this house. I bought that house because I was raising 3 kids and I wanted family, community. I wasn't thinking curb appeal. I wasn't thinking making it a rental. It's actually why it was rented so low when I first moved out, is I thought, well, it's kind of out here in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's going to want it. It's not as bad as that Clearwood or whatever that it's called, but it's not in the best location. So I don't know that I would buy that house as a rental. And all of the numbers kind of point to I should sell it. I could get a better return if I took that money. It's worth about $400,000 and I'm getting $2,200 a month. So it's I could put the money to work and make more money somewhere else. But I'm petty. And I kept that house through a divorce. And I raised my kids there up until they were in their teens. So a part of the emotions I still need to remove from the equation. But I found it off the MLS or from the MLS when I was looking for a house. And it wasn't an investment. It was just an auto search set up for single family houses. Jeremy, howdy. Good evening. Thinking about going lakeside for your next VA house hack next year in May to use it for Airbnb vacation rental in 2023. Trying to find a location in school district, but on the hunt. So, Jeremy, you have 8 kids. School district really matters to you. As an investor, I always hear people talk about how important it is to buy where there is a good school district. If you're buying single family houses like you are with multiple bedrooms, that probably really helps. Most of my units are 2 or 3 bedrooms. And of 16 units, I have 2 that have kids. So for me, it's never really been a consideration about schools. I do tell people, in some areas, you're not allowed to ask background questions. But if you don't want to rent to certain types of convicted felons, buy next to a school and they can't live there. So that's a legal form of discrimination. But yeah, so that's I like your strategy of using the VA loan again and again, and you have a service connected percentage. So your loan origination fees don't exist, so they don't go up every time. Rinse and repeat. And I think it's a great strategy to do that. If you're buying, though, I would make sure it would cash flow, even something, as a long-term investment. Not because what if you buy in an area where some law, rule, or regulation changes and you can't do short-term there? I wouldn't want to get stuck with a property that then lost value because every other investor would know that you couldn't make money in that area too. Edison, howdy. Thank you. Michael, thank you, from a college town in Oregon. Nice. What was the Oregon? One of our employees is from a college town in Oregon and has the stickers all over their car. So 23, the Sanchez. Hi, Dion. Howdy. When looking for an agent, what are some of the questions you ask them during your first meeting? So we actually did this as an exercise this week in the Bigger Pockets Bootcamp cohort. I asked everybody to put what would be the questions that you would ask your agent. And so it matters. The questions you would ask are what matters to you For me, it's speed. In a competitive market, the strongest thing I have to get my offers accepted is getting them in when I have a nervous seller who thinks, I can't believe somebody made a full asking price offer, so we're going to take it, before they realize they're going to get flooded with all these over asking price offers. So I ask, how long does it take you to reply to a text? And, do you communicate with text, that kind of stuff. So that's the question that mattered to me. Some people asked, are you an investor? Which to me, it doesn't matter if they're an investor. I would ask them questions from an investor standpoint on how would you calculate the yield of a property. And if they can tell me, great, they don't need to be an investor if they know that. If they don't know that, because all an agent to me is I want fast, professional looking offers that have the clauses in there done right. So their brokerage has to have a good system set up. I want to be able to use DocuSign so I can sign off my phone within like 5 minutes of finding a deal. I would ask, what is their availability? Because sometimes I find a property at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday and I need a text message back. And if they're not comfortable with that, then they have to understand that I'm going to be going to the next agent because I'll work with several. I ask if they're okay knowing that I work with several. And I explain that as a home buyer, I understand an agent would want to work with a home buyer and have an exclusivity agreement where they only work with that one person, because that person's going to take up a lot of their time. They're going to go and look at properties. They're going to ask a million questions. I want an agent who's going to set up an auto search and then doesn't hear from me until I find a deal from their auto search that I want to make an offer on. And then when I make that offer, I need it to be done fast. So what matters to you? What footprint do they work in? Are they licensed on the MLS, because they have to pay for MLS access in your area? So I invest in Pierce and Thurston counties in Washington. Some agents are in Pierce and King County, and some are in Thurston and Lewis County. But finding one that's licensed in where I'm at, or whatever region, however it's broken up, I'm not an agent. I don't know. But I want to make sure that they have access to everywhere that I want to invest. The other questions that came up were, how many transactions have you done in a year? Making sure that I think that person's goal was to make sure that they do enough business to have good systems in place. For me, I don't care if the agent's brand new or if the agent has 30 years of experience. I'm going to ask my questions on yield because I invest for a return. I don't invest for curb appeal or the way the kitchen's facing or any of that kind of stuff. I know the areas I want to stay in and stay out of, and I know what my yield needs to be. So if they understand that the numbers are going to be why I make offers or why I don't make offers, that's good. If an agent is brand new, and one of my agent that I work with that has been phenomenal, I've done my last like 3 deals with him. When I first started talking to him, he was brand new to the industry. I just asked him, what brokerage are you working with? And he was with Keller Williams, which has a great onboarding process and tons of support in place. He's now with Mosaic, so he's shifted where he works, but he is also an investor now and just killing it. So if you're working with a brand new investor, I would ask, what's your team look like? What's your support look like? If you're brand new and you haven't only done a couple of transactions, do you have somebody that's going to be able to answer questions when I ask you that you can go to? So that's kind of the list of questions I would go through with an agent if I was trying to vet one. And Dawn, I wish I had done a series on your friend's deal. Wish you had done a series on your friend's deal. That would be awesome to watch you walk someone through it. If I can find somebody willing to do a series because they're already stressed out, and then I'm going to put a camera in their face and say, tell them why you're stressed out, I probably would have. I think in this case, she probably would have stabbed me. But I might do a series on here's how her deal went, because here's what's funny. I bought a duplex here for $298,000 in 2018. She bought a duplex here. It's like 6 houses up. $555,000. Sounds insane. 298, 555,000. This is the video I need to make. I need to make a separate video on this. Take a mental note. Her return year 1 is way better than mine was. In 2018, interest rates were over 5.5%. Hers is at 3. So it's about half the interest rate. So her payment isn't actually that much different. Rents, when I purchased it, were at $1,120 and $1,130. Hers 2150, 2150. Like, she's killing it compared to what I was doing. Um, that's what I want to be able to explain in a video is everybody keeps saying, oh, prices are so high, I can't buy anything. I'm like, man, I wish prices cost more because she's making way more money by buying a more expensive place. And now she's going to be gaining appreciation on a place that's worth twice what mine was when I purchased it. Now, believe me, that duplex is the one I've talked about earlier in this video. It's killing it now. It's now not 2 units each side, it's 3 units each side. It's appreciated. It's worth the same value as hers, even though I only paid $298. So it's a deal I'm glad I made. But for the people saying prices have gone up so much I can't buy it, $555 for a duplex when you only paid 3 years ago, $298. Why would she do that? Because she's not stupid. So yeah, I should make that video. Greg, thank you. Invest all. Yeah, the shirt. I'm so stunned by the shirt. Thank you. Ace, would you be willing to help teach me how to do the numbers? I think I already read that. Jeremy, I did. And I said yes, and I put my email in, unless my chats got messed up here somehow. Jeremy, took 3 checks to title today for 7 doors. I hate the wire process, and I usually can wait the 14 days for a personal check with appraisal if title works are done. Yeah, same way. Yeah. Jeremy, you're correct. Your CRM asks about ages and information on all occupants. My high-end homes are all around schools, that purposely done. Yep, you're right. Need to make sure they cash flow as long-term rental. Yep. Knock it on. Howdy. Thanks for joining us. Good evening. Did you ever find anything in Phoenix? I was looking in Phoenix because we were opening a truck driving campus, a truck driving school campus. Words are hard. And so since we were going to have a campus there, I was going to buy small multifamily and house hacking in Phoenix and Washington. The growth of Phoenix made small multifamily. I found several small multifamily deals I would have pounced all over, but we couldn't find a location for our campus. We found one finally, got it locked in, and then like the last minute, they canceled the deal because the previous owner re-rented because they couldn't find a place. They're like building cities for chip manufacturing around Phoenix. So every construction company has every type of property that a truck driving school would need. So we canceled those. And yeah, so there's other reasons too, but that was the main one. So now we're adding a campus in Twin Falls, Idaho. So I have my searches starting to be set up in Twin Falls, Idaho. Same deal. Buy small multifamily, house hack near close to each location, get paid to be able to go back and forth and work for the company. So I have not found something in Phoenix that I would buy now. Dion, I love the shirt. That's great. Edison, how long after beginning your real estate investing journey did you have that aha moment? This is the way. How many times did you have to fail to see that this was what you were going to do? When I moved from my single family house into an apartment and I rented the house out, I made all of the mistakes. And all of the mistakes with my first tenant were my fault. I rented to a friend without a lease based on a handshake, and I didn't set expectations. He was a single parent. I was a single parent. So when his rent was late, I understood. I was like, oh, I get it. No problem. So late became never. And when I finally went to the house to talk to him, I found out he had rented the house to someone else, wasn't even living there. He was collecting rent and keeping it. All of that happened because I let it. Like I set that up to happen. And when I try to explain that, I need to find a better way to explain it. Because when I try to explain that to people, people say, oh, he's not such a horrible person. That guy's still my friend. Like I set that up. It's not his fault. I made it easy for him to do that. I hated rentals. I thought, this is the stupidest thing ever. Why would anybody do this? This place is trashed. I'm going to spend thousands of dollars just to get rid of it. I'm underwater. I was trying to give it away. I called a realtor friend of mine, the guy who has 30 units that I kind of looked at as a mentor in the beginning. And I said, hey, you list this house. I don't care. I don't want a penny. You just keep all the profit. It's yours. You sell it. Couldn't give it away. It was underwater just enough to where people wouldn't even do subject to and take over my mortgage. So I was stuck with it. And then I got a good tenant in there and I realized I was not educated. So to become a Marine, 13-week boot camp, infantry school, MOS training, right? I became the training NCO for our unit. So training just goes on forever to become a police officer. It was a 6-month academy. And then your training is like, you have your field training officer that goes on after that. If you want to work in a field that requires a degree, you're talking like 4 years in school, to get the degree to go to work in that field. And I thought I could jump into real estate. I could replace my income, and I don't need any education. I don't even need to open a book. That was my mistake. So in that first year, I realized I found Rich Dad Poor Dad. I found Bigger Pockets. Michael Zuber didn't do his book for several years, but I found don't reinvent the wheel. People have been investing in real estate for thousands of years. Find a way that someone else has done it that has worked. Where do you get a lease? How do you screen? Do you screen tenants? That's a thing. Why would you do that? Who's going to want to live in your place? Well, if you've never advertised one, you don't realize that if you have a rental right now and you put it on apartments.com, the next 2 days of your life is 1,000 emails. Like, that's how hard it is to find a tenant. There's not enough rentals, and there's a bunch of people looking for places. So screening your tenants is harder than finding your tenants. So it was less than 2 years where I had the aha moment. And as soon as I had that aha moment of house hacking, and I thought, buy a single family house like Jeremy, live there for a year, move on to the next one. In my area, it just doesn't work. But found small multifamily, and I realized I'm able to pay $1,500 a month to live in this apartment. If I go move into that place, it's going to cost me $300 a month to live. In order to make $1,500 to pay, you have to make physically like $1,700 to $1,900, depending on the tax bracket you're in, to have that money to pay. So if I could drop that down to $300, now I need to earn like $390 to pay that. It's super easy. That was the aha moment. I was like, reducing or eliminating your largest your expense is going to have a bigger impact than anything else that you can cut out of your life, because I am not frugal. Like, the FIRE community, financial independence, retire early, a lot of them, that F at the beginning, some people think it means frugal. No. I have every streaming service there is. I drive a jacked up F-250 pickup with every ridiculous sticker that you could put on it. I spend a month a year traveling. Next year, I'm upping that to 3 months a year. So, hey, boss, if you're watching this, 3 months next year, I'm going to enjoy that. I go out to eat all the time. I raised 3 picky kids that were hard to cook for, one that doesn't like pasta and one that doesn't like red meat. And how do you make food that makes them not die? So I'm never cooking again in my life. I eat out all the time. I watch movies at the theaters when COVID isn't a thing. I had to be frugal for those first 4 years. I had to work a ton of overtime. I had to do that sacrifice a couple of years. Once the income snowball kicks in, and I realized this from my brother, and I respect my brother, and I thought he was insane. He ran a tree service. He was an arborist. He would work 10 to 15 hours a day, just back-breaking work. And I was the youngest of the brothers, so I was the manual labor of the family. I hated tree work. I joined the Marine Corps because it was so much easier. And so he would work all that 10 to 15 hours a day on his tree company, running his crews, maintaining his equipment, sharpening his saws in the morning, doing all of his own oil changes and all of his own equipment work. And then he was buying rentals. He had a paid off house. He took out a home equity line of credit, and he would buy rental properties, falling down mobile homes on acreage. But he is a craftsman. I do not have these skills. He can do drywall. He can do room rearrange. He can do everything you can do to make these really nice looking rentals, right? And so he was working 10 to 15 hours a day, managing his crews and his own equipment. And then he was buying rentals and doing all the work himself. I thought he was insane. That's how you kill yourself. And then he gets to about the age of 50. He shuts down the tree service. He doesn't sell it or anything. He just closes it down. He says, I'm going to keep all my equipment in case I ever need to go back to work. So he's got a plan. He now has 10 paid off rentals because he took out his home equity line of credit, bought a property, focused, and paid off, rinse and repeat until he got to 10. So his cash flow now is over $10,000 a month. He never has to go and do this work. He's got a property management running him. He's coming up on 7 years, so 6 years plus. Every day is Saturday. He's like Michael Zuber, except he doesn't do a YouTube channel for 5 hours a day. I mean, he's got quads, Sea-Doos, motorcycle, camper. We went to Thailand and Colombia. Like, he's just living the life that nobody can, because for those years, he lived the life that nobody would. So that's what I had to do. In the first few years, I had to live the life that nobody would. Ton of overtime, my poor kids didn't have streaming services. We had the Friends DVD collection, so they can quote every Friends episode ever, but they didn't watch TV for like 10 years of their life, 5 years of their life, probably. But now they're each going to inherit millions. I've gotten them vehicles. At some point, I was going to help my son with his college debt, but he got his head screwed on straight, took care of all of that himself. $54,000 in college debt that he paid off in 1 year all by himself, him and his spouse, his wife. So I haven't even had to help with that. Like the stuff that our family went through to get to where we are now, to where, I'm going to get them to where work is optional for my kids too, uh, when they're ready. So let me see where I was here. 23, the Sanchez. Thanks for answering your question. How do you pitch a first seller finance deal? So it won't fit in the comments, but I will put it in the description of this video. I have a seller finance letter that I send in with my offer. Every offer going forward is going to have my seller finance pitch. And if that doesn't work for you, here's what it would look like with a conventional loan. It points out, I don't want to have a big tax impact for you. I'd rather pay interest to you than to a bank. You hold a financial note. It's an actual thing that you can sell in the future if you need your money. I'll put in a $20,000 early prepayment penalty for the first 5 years, so that I'm not just trying to get the sale and then create a taxable event for you. Like, it's all spelled out in that letter. So look in the description of this video, probably tomorrow, because it has to upload after, however YouTube works. It has to be available, and then I can change the description. I'll put my letter in the description. That's how I would do that. And I wish I had done it on all of them up until now. I didn't really learn about the strength of seller financing until this last year. The 2-4. Any advice for someone who's never had a tenant issue? Then Gavin announced housing is key initiative. So I'm experiencing my first non-paying tenant in Los Angeles, where moratorium is still active. There are COVID relief funds that changed. So the first year of COVID, in 2020, the tenants had to be experiencing a financial hardship, and they had to request funds to help pay with their rent. But people realized, I'm hoping this is why it changed, people realized that there were tenants working that had no financial hardship that just said, hey, I'm not going to pay rent anymore because I can save my money. So they changed it this year to where those funds are available for landlords to apply for. So check in your state, you Google COVID relief funds and find that. That's one option. The other is, you have a lease in place with that tenant. Is there anything else other than non-payment that could be an issue? How many people are staying in the house? Is every adult that's in the house on the lease? They have, most leases have how many days a person is allowed to stay there before they have to, be notified. Where the car is parked. Anything that you can think of that's a lease violation, a legal reason that you could do an eviction for. You have those. I would talk to an attorney, find out what your other options are too. I don't think people understand how much the eviction moratorium is going to hurt renters going forward. Rents are going to skyrocket. Owners are going to have to bank more rents to create bigger reserves to mitigate the risk of things like this, where the government can just say, you have to pay your taxes, you have to pay your insurance, you have to pay your utilities, but your tenants don't have to pay you. So hopefully that helped. Nakadon took his message back, and now we'll spend the rest of the night trying to figure out what he said. Julie, extreme ownership. Nice. Thank you. Hey, Mike. Mike is here. Love Dion's story, extreme ownership. Extreme ownership is the only way to go. Here's what I love about my memory. I don't get the reference. That's why my friends around me are always entertained, because it's always like Groundhog's Day. Everything's new to me. Okay. Jeremy, know your frenemy was the lesson on the deal you did with your friend. It's amazing that you were able to personally detach and be critical of your process. Yeah, my process is bad. I'm still, like I said, I'm still friends with that guy. Um, I'm going to try to help him get into rentals. And he has not evolved. He has come a long way since then and apologized so many times. Uh, it's been really nice knowing him still. So, the lumberjack landlord, howdy. Thanks for coming in. Jeremy, Matt, you brought up all my Home Depot locks. Only got 10. Are you guys in the same area? I always, for my schlag locks, I go to Home Depot, Lowe's, and Amazon, and I look for whichever one has it on sale, and I order them there. The ones I like usually cost about $105. I look for them on sale at about 89. If you're going to get coded locks, there's a couple things to consider. I like the ones where you engage the lock. You enter the code and it will let you engage the lock, not the ones where an engine or a little motor engages it. Those type, the batteries only last a couple of months. Where you engage it, I've had batteries last multiple years. I put in the lease. The tenants are supposed to replace the lock every year, and I've never had a lockout issue. So, Jeremy, did not miss that in the last stream. I found it on auction. A lot of them today. Nice. TVS 24. Love every part of your story. Thank you. I love it too. I love that the bad parts are behind me. Lumberjack. Yeah, that's awesome. Nia. Howdy. Living the life that nobody would so that you can live the life, live the life that nobody would so that you can live the life that nobody could. I like it. Knock it on. That is the best thing you can pass on to your children, how to be independent. Yes, they definitely are too. Yeah, my kids are doing great. It's awesome. I sometimes think I failed because they didn't have the best examples at life. Like they've never had a good example of a successful relationship. And when they were younger, they didn't have a good example of somebody who understood finances because I was one of those guys that thought I'm going to work until I die. Like I was 40, never had $1,000 in the bank, and the Marine Corps didn't work out, law enforcement didn't work out, so the option for pensions was even going away. If it wasn't for real estate, I would probably be working into my 70s. Larry, live the life you don't want to for 2 to 4 years so that you can live the rest of your life. Every day is Saturday, just like Mike. Every day is Saturday. Edison, how do you make food so they don't die? Yeah, love that part. It was a struggle. Like if you remove all pasta from every meal, what's left? And you take out red meat from every meal, what's left? Thank you for the very thorough and entertaining response. Thank you. It's always inspiring watching you. Thank you. The value you provide is a blessing. Oh, thank you. I'm just glad that somebody's here to share it with. One of the things I struggle with is in my personal life, no one cares about finance. I run a company that has 60 staff. I should probably count that. It's more now. We're adding a 5th campus. Out of the entire company, 2 staff, 2 invest in real estate. And the owners, like they gave me 10% of the company, but the owners of the whole company are just now in the last few years looking at real estate. They run businesses. That's their thing. They get it and they're good at it. But I finally got them to come around to go, hey, this real estate thing seems to be working out for you. How does that work? And that has me super excited. So I like that I get to come on here, and I like doing videos and sharing information. These live streams are really cool because these are questions that I wouldn't maybe know to make a video about. Edison, it will keep grinding. Nice. And if I ever miss a question, because these shift, just throw it in there again. More overshare is good. You are an inspiration to lots of us. Yeah, well, that's my problem is I never know what's an actual overshare. And when I make a video that I can edit, I can actually go back and go, yeah, I'm going to take that out. Well, on a live stream or when I'm doing the videos with Mike, he doesn't edit at all. One rental at a time. He just hits record and let's go. And so don't sue me because I just say the stuff that comes to my brain. Jimena, good job. Your son's student debt is a big struggle for so many people. Yeah. Went to school, got a job basically running a division at PayPal, making almost nothing. My graduation present to him was I paid to put him through our CDL school, so he became a truck driver and went out and made enough money to tackle his student loan debt. So his CDL paid for that, not the degree. And then he made a weird decision, and he came and became an instructor at our school. And he's amazing instructor. Like the students just he gets them, I guess. Um, so let's see where we are here. Knock it on. I was asking about Phoenix, but then you are looking in another state. Yes. So I'm looking in Idaho now. Idaho and Washington. So wherever I find the best fourplex, and my goal is to spend over $1 million on my next property, that'll be where I spend it. And the yield will scale with the price of that. I mean, there's a lot of details going on there. The price goal isn't the only thing. It's just something I want to do because for about a year, I've been saying I wish all my properties cost more, because I'm learning in the last couple of years that Michael Zuber says this a lot. You can go broke buying cheap. And for my first few years, I was trying to buy cheap, and it was a mistake. Lesson learned, move on, do better. Yeah, looking in Idaho for the campus, which we have. The campus is in place in Twin Falls, and now so I'm looking there for small multifamily for myself too. Matt, I never get notifications when you go live. I guess I need to check my settings. I'll have to catch up tomorrow. Cool. And then tomorrow you can put it on 1.5 and go quicker. Angel, the goat, thank you. Alan, did you receive your shirt? I did. And I held it up a bit ago. So if anybody is here that didn't see this earlier, Alan, thank you. So cool. I will probably put that on and go to each property and make a new picture image of each property for the collages that I put in the videos. Thanks. Janelle, do you work with wholesalers? If so, how do you vet them? I vet wholesalers based on them bringing me good deals, which none have ever done. I've gone to local REI meetups and tried to meet wholesalers, and the ones that I encountered, and if you're watching, this is why I never called you back. Worse deals than I'm finding on the MLS for extremely overpriced amounts. I think the wholesalers I encountered had deals they were too embarrassed to list on the MLS because they wanted so much money for them that they're waiting to find an investor who doesn't know what they're doing. The yield isn't there. The type of work to get the lending qualified wasn't there. So I haven't had good luck with wholesalers. Judge the wholesaler by the deal. If they bring you a deal, actually look at it. Is it in a good neighborhood? How much work needs to be done? What is the area average rents? What is your payment going to be? Run it just like you're looking at a deal off the MLS. Or from the MLS. There's really no different. The deal is the deal, not the way you found it. You can do mailers, and you can go to court and look up the divorce records in your area. You can look up the tax records to figure out who's paying taxes from another state or who's delinquent in taxes. But when it comes down to the deal, it's what is the yield? What is my cost going to look like making my payment versus my income? What would the yield be? So I would look at wholesalers. I would look at the deals they send me the same way as I look at as an agent bringing me. I don't care what the wholesaler is making. If somebody gave a property to a wholesaler and the wholesaler brought it to me and sold it to me for $1 million, I'd be okay with that if the deal made sense. If the yield was there for me to get at least a 10% or better cash on cash return based on the amount of money that I spend to buy or that I invest to buy the property, I don't care what they make. Like just the same way I don't care what my real estate agent makes. I want my agent to make his commission because I want him motivated to bring me the next deal. I judge if the deal's good or not, and that is getting a yield that is in my area. Learn your area average. You know, if in my area 7 or 8 is average, I look for 10 or better. If in your area it's 5, look for 8 or better. You figure out what's average and then go for the great deals, whether it's from a wholesaler or the MLS, word of mouth. Yeah. Rob, okay, I'm here. Only 87 minutes late. Have we been on for 87 minutes? I can't math, so somebody's gonna have to tell me. I could start now. Great, cool. Jeremy, there is not overshare. Okay. Well, I try to be as transparent as possible, and I get it that there are investors that have huge portfolios and that are doing really well, and they're just making these phenomenal numbers that we can't understand. And what's great when there's investors like that is they focus on those first few years, because that's the perspective that most people are coming from. Is I'm buying the next deal. I'm buying the next deal. So I'm always going to talk about where I started, what those first 2, 4, 6, 8 years were. Um, when I talk about net worth and stuff like that now, it's just as to say, here's why those 4 to 6 years of sacrifice were worth it, because this is what comes next. And it's not, I think if I buy a rental property, I will make money next year. It is, here's what I was making when I got to the first one. Here's what I'm making now with however many I have at the time I'm talking. So, Tiffany, I'm thinking about I'm thinking about keeping my present single family home and corporate renting it, furnished for 30 to 60 days. Do any of the three amigos do midterm furnished rentals? I have a friend, that's what he does. He works with a company that does, they chase storms. What are they called? Linemen. So the company that sends linemen out to do line repair whenever there's a storm. And so they've got different companies, different construction companies. They furnished and then they rent. It's kind of almost an Airbnb setup, but once you have a relationship with the company, then they can just go through the company. I'm not sure of the legalities of that or how Airbnb cares about it, but that's what they started. They started short-term rentals, and then they went doing corporate rentals for companies to put employees at, which is something that my company should do, because right now we do training 2 or 3 times a year, pretty far out, at a place called Forks, which you're familiar with if you have teenage girls. And we put our staff in hotels. We should probably look into placing them with like an Airbnb out there and see how that goes. Uh, I don't, I so Mike, one rental at a time uses property management. So I would have to ask if he used, that'd be a great question. If you're in the Facebook group, the Three Amigos of Phi, ask the Three Amigos or anybody in that group if they've done corporate furnished short-term 3 to 6 month rentals, and see what you get. Because Matt might do that. I know he self-manages, but I think he does mostly long-term. I want to buy cheap. California told me to F off. My brother invests in California. A lot of people that say my area, like if you invest in Seattle, you're going to say Washington's too expensive. Come down south of Seattle, you have Tacoma, Olympia, you go north past Everett, and you hit prices. If you go to California, LA County and Kern County are on different planets when it comes to prices. But cheap may, if you can get the rents to justify it. And here we go. My throat lasts about an hour, and we're past that. So I have kamikaze in a bottle though, so that should help my throat, right? Have you looked in Oregon much? Small multi. I have not looked in Oregon. I don't want to buy where there is rent control. So I have not looked in Oregon. I did a deal deep delve with a friend of mine who purchased in Bend, Oregon, and he did small multifamily as a house hack, because I think the way the laws are, you're exempted if you are owner occupying the property. Verify it locally. So if I was going to do that, that's what I would do. And his was a pretty good deal. I think on my channel, deal deep delve, and then they're numbered. It was in the first 10 or so. And his contact info is in there too, so he can tell you what his experience has been going like. Campbell, hello from Nova Scotia, Canada. Love your videos. Howdy. I was just interviewed on a channel called A Canadian Investing in the United States. And I'm not sure when that will release, but his channel's pretty good. It's got great info. So it's got information on somebody from Canada, living in Canada, investing in the United States. So maybe check that out if you haven't already. Angel, on your house hacks, do you take care of the lawn or hire it out? All of the duplexes are easily divided into these are your responsibilities. So I have side by side units. Recently, somebody asked if you have an over under, how do you work that out? The bottom tenant usually is in charge of the rent or the lawn, and maybe that affects the rent a little. The upper tenant would only be responsible for the yard if there was a portion that they were going to use because they had a dog or something. My fourplex, so my all my duplexes, my single family house, my triplex, all that is handled by the tenants. My fourplex, where I live, there was a period of time, like I bought it and it closed. It's really weird. My fourplex closed January 6th, 2020. I started a YouTube channel January 6th, 2021. So like anniversary dates, I guess. For the first summer, I mowed the lawn. I was there. I got an electric mower, put earbuds in, listen to a thing, walk around. Lazy. I now have a service. Doesn't cost too much. It's kind of a big yard, but it doesn't cost too much. I think it's like $200 every month or every other month or something. But that to free up my free time, I would do. So if you have small multifamily where it's easy to point out this part of the area you're responsible for, the tenants can take care of it. But for the fourplex, mine are townhome style, so that's just it doesn't make sense to divide up the yard for them. So for that, I have a service. Where were we? Thank you, Tiffany. Rob, Matt said he does traveling nurse stuff. So yes, he does 30 to 90 a day. Yeah. TBS 24. Washington's too expensive. Try your north neighbor in Vancouver. Yeah. Yeah, the numbers in Vancouver, although there is an investor that invests in Cal, and it's on like the outskirts of some towns where it's pretty far out there, and the properties are 20 to 40,000, whatever currency you guys use. I don't have to remember who that was, but I remember because I remember thinking almost everything I've heard of in Canada is just super expensive, but there are areas that aren't. I don't know if you'd want to live there though. Lumberjack landlord. I did, not anymore. Too lumpy and not enough of a premium. Did better with corporate H-1B visa rentals. Okay, there you go. I stand corrected. Ellie Ode, are you gay? That is a great question. How do I answer that and not be sarcastic? All right, arrogance and sarcasm in the same sentence. I'm only not gay because I've never met a guy that looks as good as me. Write that down. No. No, not gay. Thinking White Rocket's nice. Okay, Chester. Howdy. Took a nap and now I'm up to check out the live stream. Do you plan on writing your own book? Yes, I actually have a book outlined that I'm going to write, but it's going to be kind of in lesson format. It's the beginning of the book will be where I'm at now so that people will know why they want to listen to it, or read it, listen to it, because it will be audible also. And then where I started from, so a reverse engineered, not where I started in there, but it's going to be where I got. And then it's going to be concept chapters of, how to invest in real estate without spending any money. I've made videos on some of these chapters, and then the second half will be, the actual how to screen tenants, how the binder method works, the nuances of that all spelt out. Because some people learn from watching videos. I learned from listening to audiobooks and podcasts. Some people learn from sitting with a paper book in their hand and going through page by page, marking just the old tactile form. So I want to get that information out that way. It's in the future ways. Right now, the next focus for me is I am narrating 15 conversations with real estate millionaires. And so I have to learn a whole new thing. I have to go to the Amazon site and learn how they record, what file format they like. I don't have a sound studio. So if you notice on my videos, every now and then you can hear a motorcycle go by in the background. That's not going to be good on an audiobook. So I've got to get all through that and then figure out how long that takes me. But yeah, definitely a book is in the future. Lumberjack was right. Did them just stopped. Okay. Cody, have you ever considered subdividing your duplexes and creating a zero lot line? How would financing work if it's currently on one loan? Trying to figure out the best way to do that for your current duplex. I have not done that. I've not looked at subdividing. I live in the almost communist state of Washington, where it's almost impossible to get anything permitted or anything changed or divided or added. So I haven't even learned those strategies. I know that growing a business, we had one truck driving school campus. We added one in Port Orchard. It took a couple weeks. We had one in Thurston County. Getting the licensure in place took 4 hours. We tried to put a campus in Auburn, which is in King County, and it was 9 months to even get communication going with that stupid city. Not bitter. So no, I haven't looked at doing anything like that in my state. I like to buy existing rent-ready or already occupied properties that cash flow. And with working full-time, that's what's worked best for me. The lumberjack landlord might have done some of that. And I know that Michael Zuber has done a bunch of, burrs and stuff like that. So they might be the ones to reach out to for that. Yeah. Lewis, I'm using that one. Nice. Ali, ooh, so it can be made with yourself. Right, exactly. That's why I make videos with 2 people in it. Good. At least you got my sense of humor. Thank you, Chester. I will skip over that and he can read it himself. All people are here to participate, learn, and understand how to financially better their families' lives. Hey, well, I'll take it as a compliment. Okay, so we're coming up on 2 hours, and I would hope that there are more questions because this will go on as long as you guys do. I don't have a timeline or a time limit. So I got my kamikaze in a bottle, so my voice won't give out. Another question, Chester. What credit score would be best for someone trying to get started? So it depends on what get started means. If your current living expenses are very expensive and renting and you might be able to get a better mortgage, there are FHA loans that will go into the 500s for credit score. Your rate's going to suck, but remember, price and rate are just parts of the equation. If you're buying a small multifamily and you can house hack, what is the reduction in your housing costs going to be, even with PMI and higher rates and that kind of stuff? The order of operations for investing for me, and I have a video on the 6 steps to get started. The first one is to learn how to save. If you can't save when you're not making a lot of money, you're not going to save when you make a lot of money. The second thing is to work on credit score. The ultimate goal should be to get a 740 or higher to get the best rates and best options. But that doesn't mean postpone it for years if you've got things on your credit that are going to make it hard to get your score that high. And there are a lot of videos on how to improve your credit score. One of the things that I did that was kind of simple that got a 30-point bump in my score was my system is very simple. 1 checking account, 1 savings account, 1 credit card. My credit card I pay off daily. I've never carried a balance and I've never had a late payment because I pay it off daily. But credit utilization of over 10% gives you a negative score. It impacts your score. So if you have a $1,000 credit limit and you spend $101, you broke 10%. I had a $5,000 limit. I was spending, $1,500 a month or so. So I was breaking that 10% limit. I called my creditor and I said, look, hey, I want to increase my credit. I've been with you guys for blah, blah, blah years. They raised my thing to 17,000. I don't spend a penny more than I was going to before. I'm still paying every bill that I can on credit because I want the cash back. It's what I use my card for, pay it off daily, but it stays the same amount. So my credit utilization stayed 1,500 to 2,000 maybe, but my available credit went from 5,000 to 17. So my credit utilization now is under 10% always on that. That helped my score. So there's little things like that you can do. So FHA will do, I think the preferred is 580 or higher, but it can drop lower. Conventional can do 620 or higher. I would prefer myself conventional if it was single family house because PMI goes away automatically once you get to 22%. But if you're going small multifamily right now, FHA is 3.5% across the board. So for duplex, triplex, or fourplex, it might be harder to save 15% down that some lenders are wanting. Not all lenders are made the same, and always shop lenders because that can change any minute. A couple of years ago, you were able to get 5% down conventional loans across the board. Then it changed in 2018 or so. And Matt, the mortgage guy, recently in November had a product that came out. If you were at 80% or less of the, I think it's median income in your area, you can do a 5% down on a duplex. So there was an income requirement, but that was an option there. FHA will allow a lower credit score if you have to, but it's not my preferred loan to start with. And okay, DBS 24. You can't currently subdivide an attached duplex anywhere. Check locally. It's weird. So here in Washington, if a duplex is for sale, it is the duplex. But I have some friends investing in other states where they're buying a part of a duplex, like almost like a condo style. I don't know how it works, but they're breaking up small multifamily into the units. But I don't know about subdividing, so that could be totally different. Knock it on. Washington is a beautiful highway. Never knew a town was there until you got off the highway. Every highway in Washington goes like this, though. And Washington State is where I'm at, not Washington, D.C. Lumberjack landlord. You can condo a duplex, but so there you go. But I've seen it done, right? Same thing. A duplex. Rob, you should brand that word. Dumplex. Cody Evers. You can own just half of the duplex here. I want to subdivide and sell off each part individually. There you go, Rob. Body dumplex too. I don't know that mine have been. No, I'm happy with every single one. None of my duplexes are duplexes. Okay, 2S 24. Okay, another question. How would you challenge an appraisal? Just submitted my reconsideration where appraiser is 350,000 off. So here's my kindergarten version of how I would do this. The appraisal, the appraisor, even though you pay for it, works for the lender. Like that's who's being protected by the appraisal. The lender doesn't want to lend on something that isn't valued at the right amount for them to lend to that loan to value amount. So depending on your area, each area is different on what you're allowed to do with appraisals. You're paying for another one doesn't even do it. You can contest an appraisal and point out your reasons. You can. I think Jeremy talked about doing this, where you point out the comps to the appraisal. You could say, "Look, here's the other place. Do some of the work for them and show what the prices are." For me, if it was really just a deal killer where it was 350,000 off. I had one that was 50,000 off, and I sat back, and it's the only deal I've ever backed out of once I was under contract. But the inspector also found a ton of stuff that I would have had to do that I didn't see until that point. So I would think that maybe your numbers are off because the appraisers are usually kind of, they're educated, they're working in that area. That's why they're there. If you can find comps and you can't find reasons, and you know why this is off, and you're not projecting, you know that the appraisals are based on current comps and not where you think that they should be because they've been going up for the last year and then time has passed, so it should be higher because that's not how they work. And this is just my suggestion. So if Mike or Matt or anybody is still here, please feel free to chime in. I would switch lenders, find a new lender with a new appraisal, because then you're not contesting. But you could be spending the money on that appraisal, taking another hit on your credit. If it's been more than 30 days, that credit check is going to impact you, and just see if that appraiser is that far off. But I wouldn't do that unless I knew I had comps in the area that were at the right amount. That'd be my suggestion for that. And I forgot where I was at here. Okay, all right. Lumberjack is owned a dumplex. Yeah. TVS 24, condo, a duplex sounds interesting. I have a condo that's part of a duplex. Nice, Rob. And then Campbell. Should you refinance all of your properties to get back your initial investments or pick only the most profitable ones? I have 3 multifamilies with great cash flow. So, Michael Zuber grew a massive portfolio, over 187 units, by recycling capital. He started with $40,000, got to 3, was out of money, started recycling capital, grew a massive portfolio. Lumberjack Landlord has recycled capital. He's done the $1 million challenge where you buy a property, you turn it into a $1 million property. I have never recycled capital. I recycle cash flow. As the cash flow comes in, I invest it. I even paid off a single family house. I'm just now looking at doing a cash out refinance on a single family, because the question to start with for me is not, when does it make sense to take out money? When does it make sense to refinance, do a home equity line of credit, do a cash out? If you're going to be able to pay it off quickly, the home equity line of credit might make sense, but it's an adjustable rate. I don't like that. If you're doing a cash out refinance, if you have an existing mortgage and the new refinance will get you a better rate on that existing mortgage, then that makes more sense than the home equity. So there's reasons to do each one. The first question is, if I took this money out, what the heck would I do with it? Do I have a place where I can put this money to work and get a return that is so good that it compensates me for the work that it takes to grow this and pays the debt service on that cash out? Because you're going to reduce the cash flow on the property that you took the money out of. So that's the question. Where are you going to put the money to work? How much money do you need to put to work? If you use a home equity line of credit, you only pay interest on the amount that you took out. And as you pay it down, the money is reusable like a credit card. Whenever you have a home equity line of credit, they take 100% of the value that you could take out, and 1% of that is counted against you. It is counted against you in your debt to income ratio, because you could take out all that money, and then they figure your payment would be about 1%. It's the strategy my brother used. He took out a home equity line of credit, purchased a place, fixed it up, never took out another refinance, just focused all his cash flow from his business and his rentals to pay it off, rinse and repeat. So he knew he could pay it off quick, so it made sense. I haven't done this. And yes, I probably could have got to the number of units that I have faster, but my cash flow would be significantly less. So if you think you can find deals and you're confident in your ability to find a deal that has a better return, a return good enough to justify the added expense to the existing asset, then recycling capital makes sense. One of the reasons I feel really lucky, our favorite word, you're so lucky, it must be nice, is I get to hang out with Matt the Lumberjack Landlord and Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time. Steel sharpens steel. The more I hang out with them, the more I get to interact with them, the better investor I'm going to be. So like I said, I'm just now at the point where I'm thinking of recycling that capital, kind of from some peer pressure, but kind of from their experience and knowledge coming to me. So I'm very thankful for that. There we go. Chester. Is there a preferable type of loan to use when scaling a portfolio, along with it asset protection strategy? I've heard mention and bits of pieces about LLCs versus umbrella coverage, which is better. So asset protection, umbrella policy is asset protection. Listen very carefully. There is absolutely none, zero asset protection by having your properties in an LLC. None. It's a myth. Unless you have partners. An LLC is designed to protect you from someone else's mistakes. So actually, Michael Zuber is very smart, and he doesn't answer questions like this because he doesn't want to get sued. And I get that. So don't sue me. I'm being transparent. There's a thing called piercing the veil. If you and your spouse are the only owners of an LLC, when you get sued for anything, the courts are going to say, list out all of your assets. And that is every LLC that you own. So they can pierce the veil. Any attorney who's not asleep will just do a 10-minute Google search to figure out who owns whatever company. Depending on your state, it might be a little bit harder to find. But if they prove that you own an asset, they can pierce the veil. So asset protection comes from 3 things. Insurance. You have property insurance on the property. My policies look like up to $300,000 for what's called slip fall or injury protection, and then full replacement cost of the property. Then you have an umbrella policy that insures you, where you list out each property in that umbrella policy. So if you ever get sued and the injury goes above the 300,000 threshold for the property, then the umbrella policy kicks in because it's protecting you. The second form is leverage. The banks are in first position when you have a mortgage on your properties. So nobody's going to take them other than the bank. And then the third thing, the best form of asset protection, is fix things. Like do a walkthrough, check the banister, make sure the steps aren't covered in moss, and then the anti-slip stuff is there. And when anytime a tenant requests a repair, if it's anything safety involved, make sure you take a reasonable and necessary amount of time to get it fixed, that you don't delay those kind of things. I am going to make a video, but not today, on my opinion of LLCs and how many new, and my concern is never that you're going to have an LLC. Have 50 of them. I don't care. My concern is a new investor who's trying to learn, how does financing work? How do I find a deal? How do I fund a deal? How do I find a network? How do I find a contractor? How do I find a tenant, find a lease, screen a tenant? How do I do all of this stuff? But I can't do any of that because I don't have my LLC. How do I pick a name? Where do I register that at? What do you mean I have to pay the taxes for next quarter? I don't have an LLC yet. All those things that will just stop an investor in their tracks and they'll never take action. Buy a property, have insurance, put a tenant in it, and make money. They're kindergarten simple. But LLC thing, so many CPAs and attorneys who profit from setting them up, maintaining them, and filing taxes on them have convinced everybody that you need an LLC to do anything. There's no tax benefits at all. It's a pass-through entity. The IRS actually calls it a disregarded entity. So there's no tax benefit. There's no asset protection. All it does is, if you have partners, it protects you from their mistakes. It gives you access to commercial lending. So there are times it makes sense to have an LLC. Hard money, commercial loans. You can do a little bit of name separation if you don't want your tenants to know that you're the owner of the property. There's a few times where it makes sense to have an LLC. Taxes and asset protection are not them. So when I make that, I'm waiting till I get to 10,000 people to make that video because it's going to be a rant. And when I do it, I'm probably going to lose 50% of the people that watch the channel because so many people are just absolutely at their core convinced you have to have LLCs. So yeah. Let me see. I lost where I was at. There we go. Rob Dump Lex. Nice. Knock it on. A real estate guru back in the 1980s named Paul Simon had equity sharing that titled each unit separately. Interesting. I think, me personally, it probably would have been a lot harder to invest before YouTube University, because right now it's something so simple as I'm swapping out the electrical thing, but this is a three-way switch. What the heck is that? 10 minutes on YouTube and I'm swapping out an electrical three-way switch. What would that have taken in the 80s, right? To go and find a book somewhere that had the diagrams for that, let alone how everything else worked. Lumberjack, landlord, bad appraisal, change lender. That's best, but only if you have supporting comps. Yeah, nailed it. Okay, good. Thank you. That's actually one I haven't dealt with, because the one time I had appraisal, I've had appraisal come in low a few times, not 350,000. That sucks, but I like it when it comes in 10,000 low, because the person who has the ability to walk away has the power. And when you tell the seller, it came in low, I can't do lending, I'm just going to walk away, the price came down $10,000. So I saved $10,000 because the appraisal disagreed with my offer. Cody, Lumberjack, how did you finance your condos after you split them? Just keep the original financing. I'll see if he puts an answer in here. That'd be great. Sonali or Malik, what do you think about real estate market going in 2022? Also, what do you think about mortgage interest rates going in 2022? Those are great questions, and hopefully I got your name right. The market in 2022, I see prices going up. Demand is outpacing supply. Supply is being limited. Stupid things like the beginning of this video, I talked about rent control in St. Paul, where companies who had projects started stopped them because the strictest rent control that I've ever heard of in this country is now in place in St. Paul. 3% cap, not cap plus inflation, just cap, including new builds. So new builds are not going to happen. So that's just one localized market where that's going to happen. Cost of materials went up, so prices are going to go up, because when you increase the price of something, you increase the end buyer's price, purchase price. We're looking at 40-year mortgages. We're looking at record low interest rates. Even if they go up to 4 or 5%, it's still record low, because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they were in 18%. And so rates can go up, but they're still low right now. First-time home buyer programs are out. Home buyers purchase on price or payment. What is my payment going to be? So 40-year mortgage keeps the payment down. Low interest rate keeps the payment down. Higher wages means that they can afford to pay more for that payment. Investors buy on yield. What is the yield? I can afford to pay this much for the property. So wages impact rents. Rents are going up. Rents impact yield, which impacts prices. So there's all of these factors pointing at prices going up, and we have none of the factors that point at a crash. The last crash in 2008 was caused by ninja loans, adjustable rate mortgages, people borrowing at 100%. I was one of those people. I borrowed a house, 100% borrowed. What do you call it? Loan to value was 100%. Plus, they rolled in closing costs. So I purchased day one negative equity with an adjustable rate mortgage. Luckily, I was able to refinance and keep the house, but not everybody could. We don't have any of that going on now. Adjustable rate mortgages are in the like a couple of percent instead of 90% like they were in 2008. We don't have any ninja loans. They're actually, it's anybody buying a house knows now that underwriter does a deep delve into your life and asks for every form of paperwork that you don't even know that you had to have someday. So it's hard to get mortgages now. So prices are going to continue to go up because they're basically determined by supply and demand. Tons of demand. We have people that used to rent in cities very expensive that can now work from home. So they're looking for more space. So there's more demand on properties. Kids are homeschooled. People want houses with offices. Working from home is more an option now than it's ever been. So demand for housing has gone up. I have a bet going with Matt, the lumberjack landlord, and Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time, where I'm probably going to lose because they are smarter than me on many things. And they anticipate interest rates to go up by 2022 because of inflation. The way that you limit inflation is you raise interest rates, and that slows down inflation. I think we're going to see deflation. I think the cost of certain things is going down. The spending is going down. Look at how much people have $1 trillion in equity and savings. That's the most money people have in savings in the history of ever. So if deflation happens, that's more scary to the feds than inflation is. Inflation, to an extent, is good for the government. Why? So every year, the federal government shoots for a 2% interest or inflation rate. Ever wonder why? Like, why would they want inflation? Well, they're almost $30 trillion in debt. And if inflation happens, debt becomes easier to pay off because that money has less value. So at a 2% interest rate, we have a healthy economy, and it's easier for the government to pay off debt in the future. When we see inflation of a larger scale, inflation sucks. It's a tax. Mostly affects people who don't make a lot of money, right? But if you have assets, inflation is kind of your friend. You want a bit of inflation because it's easier to pay off your debt. It's the inflation triple crown. Your assets appreciate because the money that it takes to buy them has gone down. The ability to pay off the debt becomes easier because the money that you're paying back has less value. And there's a third one, but my brain shut off. So inflation is your friend that way. Deflation is terrifying to the feds because it makes their debt harder to pay off. There's other reasons too. So that's going to cause interest rates to come down. So we have bet $1 that by July or August of 2022, I think interest rates will be below 3.3 or 3.5. I think it's in one of the videos, 3.5. So if it's below that, I win. If it's above that, they win. So I think it's going to be less. Rob, where to put the money to work? How about a 3-month bender in Brazil? I do want to go to Brazil. I think I'm going to put that on my list. And so when I come to Brazil, I'm going to want where there is scuba. So for the people in Brazil, Michael Jewell, if you're on here too, where is the scuba? Chester. To all of Dion, Matt, and Michael here, does timing, specifically 2022 environment, still favor a recycled capital or BRRRR strategy? So I know that Matt and Mike are both staging themselves to recycle capital. They're restructuring their debt, taking money out. They've talked me into looking at restructuring debt, taking out to be ready to use that capital that's recycled. And then Mike has said that if the deals don't come up in the next couple of years after 2024 or so, he's just going to take that money and pay off those loans. So he is hedging his bets. He said he's 80% prepared for inflation, 20% prepared for deflation. So I'm pretty much trying to do the same thing. I'm betting $1 that interest rates will go down, and I'll benefit from it if it does. But I'm pretty sure inflation is going to be the thing that happens because of how much we're seeing. So I'm also looking at recycling capital the same way. Lumberjack landlord, condo, doc, and survey about 8K, then refi them as condos on separate loans. Good. Campbell, I am in my growth phase and want to retire at 55, 9 years away. So as I've said on my channel a few times, the average person can reach financial independence in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position. So I think you're perfectly set to reach that goal. I think you'll be surprised that the first 5 years might not be amazing and great, but the last 4 will happen so much faster once the income snowball's kicked in. REI trainer, after Matt educated me on your name. My wife and I are considering a 203K rehab loan to acquire our next property, buy a junker and owner occupy a 2 to 4 unit, and then cash out, refinance, and move on to our next one. Any experience with this program? So I've not done one, but I've done a lot of research on them because I've helped friends do them. The problem with the 203K loan is finding a contractor who's comfortable and familiar with the process, because every time they finish a part of the project, they get paid for that. So they have to know how to get the funds. They have to know how to structure the chronology of the deal, knowing when the funds are going to be released. What I've found with my friends is when contractors aren't very busy, it's very easy to find one that's willing to work with a 203K loan. When contractors have work pushed out for months, it's a little harder to get one to say, I'll be your contractor and I'll jump through all the hoops that come with a 203K loan. It's an option. Hard money is an option. Private money is an option. There's a couple of ways to look at it. I do love the idea of a live-in BRRRR or a live-in flip. Mindy Jensen does the live-in flip. If you live there for at least 2 years while you're doing all this work, you get to realize up to $500,000 in capital gains tax-free if you're married, $250,000 if you're not. The IRS 121 rule. Like, there's all these benefits that go with that. Yeah, so if you can make it work, it's definitely worth it. Chester, I forgot to ask about trusts as part of asset protection. Would those be in consideration for an umbrella policy? So I'm going to have an umbrella policy no matter what the structure of the business looks like. It's $550 a year for $2 million in coverage. So it's not like it's another $1,000 a month expense. I mean, it's very cheap for the amount of coverage. It's very cheap, very affordable. Trust is tax strategy. How does your family get your assets when you pass away without having a massive obligation impact them? I know Lumberjack Landlords has set up in a trust. I'm at the point where I'm going to be doing a trust. I haven't done one yet. Right now, it's just everything in my name. But the trust is a tax strategy. So I would talk with your tax professional to find out the best structure for the size of your portfolio and what your goals are for that. Yeah. Lumberjack, Chester, I do both, trust and umbrella. There you go. GBS 24, great advice. Closing identical property 0.9 miles away for 1.3 million that appraised. So comfortable to comps. Yeah. Lender is supporting reconsideration. I'm not moving lenders as an hard to finance ADU builds. Right. So challenge, there's another word for it. Contest the appraisal and see if they can get another one. That might be another option. Janet, how are you? I'm marvelous. Howdy. TVS 24. Appraiser only pulled after repair values with unpermitted structures. Right. And unpermitted structures are usually run as storage, not living space. Knock it on. I have 9 LLCs and since listening to you, I am really considering getting rid of 7 of the LLCs and just keeping one for construction and one for non-QM or hard money loans. So it makes sense to get the type of lending that you need. And if you have them in place and it's not stopping your investing, I mean, unless it's a logistical nightmare and the fees are astronomical, if it's like, a couple $100 a year or something, I don't know that I would change anything. You have experience and you have them in place already. The reason I get kind of so emotionally, activated whenever that comes up is there is somebody out there right now watching a video where somebody says, this is how you start investing. We get an LLC and you pick a name and here you do your tax structure this way. And they haven't even looked at what is yield. How do you talk to an agent? How do you work on your credit score? How do you talk to a lender? How do you find out what you qualify? Like all the things that actually matter, they're skipping over getting stuck on this one thing that could stop them from starting. And that bothers me. Luis. And then the chat moved. All right. Can't have moved that far. Okay. There we go. Silly but real question. I have 5 rentals in 3 years. Is that a good number? Is that time frame? What is a good amount to buy per month? I hate answering questions with it depends. What is your goal? Are you trying to grow based on number count or unit or cash flow? My goal was stability and cash flow to make work optional. On some levels, I wish I had less units, more cash flow. On some levels. On some level, I like having enough units because when appreciation impacts a larger portfolio, it's a bigger impact. So there are investors who get 2 or 3. I think Jeremy started 3 years ago. He had 6 when we talked like a month ago. He's already got other ones under contract. So it depends on your situation, what your goals are. If lenders are still working with you, if you're at the 3-year mark, that means hopefully you're showing rental income on your tax returns. So it's fairly, your lenders can consider you a safe bet. Do you have reserves to support this? Because as your portfolio scales, so should your reserves. Because Murphy's Law is things go wrong, right? Anything can go wrong, it will. His 4th corollary is if a series of events can go wrong, they will, and in the worst possible order. So as you have more units, more things will go wrong that impact at the exact same time where you need reserves for that. So as long as you're scaling your reserves and you're monitoring your cash flow, I don't think that there's a limit to how fast you can grow, especially once you're past the first 2 years. Those first 2 years are where the lenders have the most risk involved. What is a good amount to buy per month? However many great deals you can find. The better the deal, the more I would buy. So if you're not finding great deals, then I would take your time. Lumberjack, Chester, one-time cost, it was about $3,000 to set up. Angel, given all the money you've been able to save, have you considered BRRRR? Yes, but not today. I have an auto search set up for BRRRR. So single family houses in my area, and I put under 300,000 because that generally means they're going to need a bunch of work because a terrible one bedroom house that is livable in my area goes for 400,000, right? So 300,000 or less. So I've looked at some that need a bunch of work. I've saved up the money for the basically private money, my own money. I wouldn't even have to borrow to buy it, to rehab it, and refinance it. But every time I've saved up money in those searches, I find a small multifamily that cash flows my return and takes my money. So I've considered BRRRR. I have a search set up for it. I'm not pursuing it actively, but I do recommend buy cash flowing rentals, make some mistakes, figure out how to get cash flow to work, how to screen tenants, place tenants, how to run it like a business, and then do BRRRR. I think a mistake is a lot of people start listening to Bigger Pockets and they hear about wholesaling, flipping, and burring, and they go, wow, there's ways to get into real estate where I don't have to save up a bunch of money. But there's a whole bunch of risk there. And when you're flipping or burring, there's so many ways you can make a mistake. Your after repair value can be off. Your timeline for getting the repairs done can be off. Your cost of rehab can be off. And those are things that you add that on top of starting out learning all the basics, you take a lot of risk. But if you get the basics down, and this is what Michael Zuber did too, his first 10 years, he said every deal was off the MLS with an agent and it was buy and hold rentals. Now he's done flips. He's over 56 flips and he's done burrs, and he has the base knowledge and the cash flow to support mistakes. And then you do the burr. So I think I'm about at that point where got the cash flow, got the basics down. Now I'm ready to try. Now I'm ready to try what I consider to be more risky strategies. Knock it on, or maybe an S corp for the construction company. Yep. So for companies, LLCs, I have several. I have a nonprofit that's in an LLC, and the truck driving school is an LLC. So it makes sense. It just doesn't make sense to buy rental properties focusing on LLC because it doesn't give the benefits some people think that they're going to get after taking all the time to learn how to do an LLC and set it up. Of your humility. Good. Now, if you can't make fun of yourself, what's the point, right? Lumberjack landlord. Trust, yes. I have one trust and umbrella over that. Yep. Janet or Janet. I missed you. I've been working overtime in order to generate more cash flow. Nice. I've definitely been there. I have a question. I live in LA. How do you feel about the Alabama market, Huntsville? I do not know the market. I do know that if I was going to try to learn a market, there are several things I would do. Anytime I was going to invest, the order of operations goes tactical advantage. Either I live there, or I used to live there and I know the areas, or I know someone I trust who lives in that area or knows the neighborhoods, because 3 blocks away in one area could be a massive difference in what you can get for rents, or if it's even safe to go there and collect the rent. Connect with property managers, connect with agents, and understand that if you reach out to something like an agent in Alabama and say, hey, I'm an investor from California, I'm thinking of coming to Alabama, they're going to go, hey, I've got a great deal. Here's this deal. Look, it's cheap compared to what you could buy in LA, right? There are hundreds of investors in Huntsville who passed on that deal a dozen times. And there's some reason why that agent is trying to pawn it off on you. So having someone you can trust and then learning that market and doing like the one rental at a time strategy of learn the market, takes 60 to 90 days, run comps, ask for comps from agents, learn how to run the area average rents by going to apartments.com and Craigslist and actually trying to rent a unit the size of the ones you're looking at buying. A year ago, I would have said go to Rentometer, but they were basing it on the previous year, and this year rents went up so fast it wasn't working. But recently, Rentometer has changed to quarterly, so they're looking at the last 3 months now instead of the last year, so they're a little more accurate. So you can check there too. But that's what I would do. I would learn the market. It takes 60 to 90 days, and make sure that there was somebody working there that I could trust before I would invest in pretty much any market. I know that we have. Actually, I know somebody. So it was a truck driver that went to our school, started working at a company, bought in Huntsville 3 houses on one property, moved there for 1 year, and he lived in each place, fixed them up to make them rentals, and then moved back. And I think he paid $60,000 for all 3 houses on this property. And this was in 2019. So it's not like it was recent, but it wasn't 10 years ago. And now he's back to driving the truck up here with 3 rentals down there. So it took him a year to do that, though. Let me see. I keep losing where I'm at. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. JS. Do you track mileage? How do you record it if you do? I drive 75 miles one way to work and own properties there. On the day I look at the property, can I count those miles to drive to work on the property? Technically, so if you're going to work on the property, yes. If you're driving to work and you drive by the property, that's a gray area. There are mileage sheets. Just Google mileage sheets to put in there. There are apps. I don't use the app. I just use a mileage sheet. Anything involved with the rentals is definitely track all the mileage. Your CPA might want your mileage recorded a certain way. Mine literally just says, as long as you've got your written document, and in case you're ever audited, you can show them this is the miles that you drove to work on properties. They just take my Excel spreadsheet with the box for miles driven. Hello, Lumberjack. I missed you on Sunday. Work overtime. I actually was through all 3 hours with Matt on Sunday. It was great. Chester, hypothetical for Dion. Do you think the U.S. would support an inflationary environment with effective little to no debt? Hypothetical. I think it's too hypothetical. The government supports inflation because it makes it easier to pay their debt off. I don't know that if they had no debt, I don't think that's possible. Have you met the government? No, I don't think they would. And the big shift was money used to be backed by gold. So as you know, so there was something backing it. 1971, they took us off the gold standard, and now money is just fiat currency. It's technically called the petrodollar. Our dollar has value because we provide protection in countries like Saudi Arabia, as long as Saudi Arabia will only sell their oil to countries like China if you buy the dollar to buy the oil. So, I mean, there's like a whole structure to the strategy of why our money has value. But I can't see our government ever being out of debt because we don't have a tax problem. We have a debt problem, which is a spending problem. So, bit too hypothetical. So go to Panama. I went to Colombia, so it's pretty close to Panama. Yeah, that's one to check out. I am trying to think of places. Up until 2018, I had never taken a vacation. In 2018, I did a month in Colombia. 2019, month in Thailand. Then 2020, nothing because the world sucks. And then this year, I took a month into the United States. Ironically, because I travel with my brother, David, who is the investor with real estate. And then I travel with my other brother this year because he doesn't fly. So he hasn't gone to the other countries with us, but we did this trip so he could go with us. But next year, it's going to be 3 months in different countries. And it's hard to find a country because here's my goal. The first one is kind of a little easier to track. I want a strong currency exchange. So in Colombia and Thailand, the dollar goes very far. I get to enjoy everything and do big tips, and then I don't feel like I'm wasting money because it costs me less there than it does to live here and just live here. And the second criteria is finding a country that doesn't hate the United States. That list keeps getting smaller and smaller. So. TBS 24, your accountants have always pointed you towards large umbrella rather than LLC. Good, then you have a good accountant. I've talked with CPAs who've said, you have to have an LLC or your life is over. And I'm like, yeah, it has no benefit, but you get to make money, right? So effectively, JS, have you ever looked at the net value of your properties with normal appreciation? I invest in small town with zero appreciation and think I need to look at metro areas. Because I have a YouTube channel where I do content and I want to be able to explain things like, here's when I hit $1 million in net worth, or here's when I took 2, here's the timeline. I know what my net worth is. It means nothing. I would never care. I don't care about appreciation. Michael Zuber has said this on his channel. He says next year, if all of his properties dropped 50% in value, that would be great because everything would be on sale. So I don't invest for appreciation. If you're buying your properties, what does the cash flow look like? Are the rents going up at all? Is the population increasing at all? Is there more demand? Those are the metrics I would look at more than appreciation. And then as far as metro areas, if somebody asks me, where are your properties located? I am between Olympia and Tacoma in Washington. I think I have one in Tumwater, so it's a little bit south there now. I am not in Tacoma and I am not in Olympia. No one could pay me enough to own property in a city. So when you say metro, I would look at the outskirts of the city, but that's just me personally. Lumberjack landlord, REI trainer. I have done 2 of them. I use the 203K and the streamline. Dion's points are correct. Thank you. once in a while. We have to agree. I know the goal is to find out a point to point out the other person's wrong. Now. JS, and I have about 200,000 in an old 401k. What are your thoughts on cashing it out and netting about 120 and buy property with that? Can you borrow against it and not take such a hit? Can you use it as a reserve in your investing so that you don't have to touch it or tap it and be able to invest without having to have so much cash set back in reserves? I would look at options like that. Can you somehow do it into a self-directed IRA where you can use it to invest? Something that everybody points out to me that sounds like it has too many hoops to jump through for me to understand because I'm a simple investor. But there's a couple of options I would run through talking to maybe a tax professional to see what your best options were before you did something like I did. I took all the money out, but I did it in 2020 because the CARES Act said you could take out up to 100,000 as long as you were impacted by COVID, and our company was shut down for a period of time, so we were impacted. So I took all that money out. I had just like 89 or 84,000 because it dropped in March with everyone else's to 60. And I thought, well, if it ever passes where it was at 80 something, whenever it got above that, then I was going to empty it out. And it went up and I took it out. That is now sitting in a triplex, making me a ton of money. So and I think I said this earlier, if you have money in a retirement account and you're just starting and you're looking at your first or second rental, I would not touch the retirement account. You're putting that money at risk to learn your systems. Once you have a couple of rentals and you're confident in your ability to get your return, you know how to look at properties, run the numbers, all of the basics are down, then the money in the retirement account doesn't mean as much to me because it would mean so much more in a property. I mean, I hate the idea of a penny being stuck in a retirement account, not paying me now, not getting appreciation on multiples of what I invest, not getting me tenant pay down, where tenant principal pay down where the tenants pay off the loans, not getting me tax benefits. The tax benefits of real estate are way better than the tax benefits of a retirement account. And then just in case there's any attorneys watching, none of this is legal advice. This is all for entertainment value only, of course, on YouTube University. Knock it on. Chester Williams, watch Mark J. Collier. He has a YouTube channel. REI trainer, lumberjack. Awesome. I'll let you guys know how it goes with the FHA 203K. Cool. Yeah, keep us updated. That would be cool. Angel, lumberjack. When buying skylights, do you prefer Vulex with self-flashing or do you buy the flashing separately? I just did this on the fourplex last year and I got skylights that it all came together. No, it was separately flashed. The flashing came and then the skylights were separate. So that's how I did it. But I went with my roofer's suggestion. That's not like I made that decision. I have a roofer. If anybody in the Tacoma area is getting a roof done, I know a company that's great. It's Clearview Exteriors is the name of the company. Awesome work, great price, super professional. JS. And your properties are 35 to 70,000 and cash flow about 250 to 350 per month each. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if I would do a cash. It's hard to do a cash out refinance if the properties and verify that with a lender. I know it's harder to get a mortgage on a property that's worth less than 80,000. They don't usually want to lend on it. So talk with lenders to find out what your options are from a lender. TBS 24, nice. Chester Williams, knock it on. Thanks. Just going to check it out. Lumberjack prefers Velux with a good installer. Collier is awesome. That is one I will have to check out. Walk by faith and budget. Do you recommend someone with one property getting a financial planner? Okay, this is just my opinion. And I normally caveat because I'm like on the one rental at a time channel or I'm in the bigger pockets groups. This is on my channel, so it's my opinion. No, I don't recommend somebody with 1,000 units get a financial planner. I have never met a financial planner personally, and I've talked to dozens. I work on the base, and there's a ton of financial planners that come out and try to help military members transition and get them set up. I've never met a financial planner that gets real estate in any capacity whatsoever. So that was just my personal opinion. 1 unit, 100 units, at no point would I ever, as an investor in real estate, talk to a financial planner. So that's a good question. And it could be that the dozens I've talked to are just the few bad apples that are out there. But know they sell first. Howdy. Chester, awesome. I have two great referrals from Knockadon and Lumberjack. So I'm definitely checking them out. Good. Awesome. I'm going to check them out too. Know thyself first. How frequently do you visit the properties every year? I am trying to see if I can replicate the lazy way if you're out of state in referrals. So I don't even think I visit the properties every year unless I need to. So Section 8 tenants are in my area inspected by the state once a year. I don't go there unless there's a problem. For my other ones, I will usually go at least once a year and say, hey, I'm bringing your HVAC filter, and here's 3 extra ones. I'll swap out the filter and say, you can use these on the months when I'm not here. Just safety walkthrough. And so if I have a property where a handyman hasn't gone there and done a walkthrough to fix something, or I haven't gone there to check on something, then I will go do an inspection. I think the longest has been like a 2-year period, but I try to do at least once a year. And any of my units that have stairs, I go there once a year. I don't have very many. When do I have to start? One. So my fourplex, the single family house. Yeah, I don't ever have many with stairs, but those are the ones I go to make sure that the stairs and the banisters are safe. So the more, not dangerous, but prone the property is to injury, the more I would do an inspection on that. But kind of plot out where the properties are at. Go hit 3 in a day, so it's just a one loop drive or something. If you're doing out of state rentals, you're probably going to have property management. I don't know. I mean, you can self-manage at a distance. I know that there are people who do, but if you have property management, I would say they're the ones that would schedule inspections. Know thyself first. Do you think it's better to have 3 big properties with 500,000 each, or 8 smaller properties totaling the same amount, assuming all cash flow about 250 each? So I like my properties spread out, at least more than 10 miles apart, so they're not drawing from the same economic drivers, companies, base, port, college, hospital, all those kind of things. So I wouldn't want a 10-unit property. I would want 5 duplexes spread out. But if it's like I'm looking for a $1 million fourplex or more, maybe 1.5 or less. So how much money can you save for the down payment? How are you acquiring them? How much time are you going to take? If you had the money right now to invest, I would invest and spread them out. If you have, you can only have 10 mortgages in your name. So if you have a spouse and you put them in each of your name, you can have 20. I can only have 10. So I'm at the point, the first few, I just went for duplexes because I could save up the down payments faster. But currently I'm trying from now forward to get fourplexes, maybe a triplex, because I only have so many loans left in my name before I would have to go commercial. So I want them to have more units because they do cash flow better. So that's what I'm looking at now. Angel. And the really cool thing is when they cash flow 250 each, as long as you don't touch the equity, you don't do a home equity line of credit, you don't do a cash out refinance, that will increase. Rents go up more than mortgages change. And your taxes and insurance can change a little, but the principal and interest stays the same. And rents, generally, there might be an area where they go down, but in my area, we're seeing, especially this year, 20 to 40% rent increases at the tenant's request. So, Angel, thank you. Lumberjack, Larry. A buddy informed me that truckers eat ice chips to stay awake longer. Is that true? I think the ice chips would interfere with the meth. No. Anything that you can chew. So ice chips might be a thing. As a truck driver, I did sunflower seeds or something just because chewing does keep you awake. Caffeine, too much Mountain Dew, of course. Hours of service are pretty strict now. In the United States, a truck driver can only drive 11 hours in a given day, and you can not work more than 14 hours in a day. And most things are electronically logged now. When I first started driving in the 90s, I worked for a company that basically said, You're going to work for 16 hours under your number, then you're going to log yourself off and log in a mechanic's number, and then work for like another 4 or 5 hours that day. And when you're paid by the hour, and you can work 22 hours in a day, that's a good day. Absolutely not safe. So things are a lot safer now than they were even 10, 15 years ago. It's not me, I swear. That's a great name. What do you look for to call it a good improving town city when looking at rental properties to buy? So as a basis, I look for several economic drivers: a base, a port, a college, a hospital, a Boeing or Amazon terminal, and a population of 100,000 or more. So at least two or more of those. So it doesn't have to be all of them, just two or more of those. You can go to U-Haul, the truck rental place, and they usually on their website they have a truck migration chart for each year. It's usually a little bit dated, but it's not too far. It's 6 months to a year, and it'll tell you where most of their trucks are moving to. Look for population increase based on county charts. I would want a place where people are moving to, not from. So those are the basic things that I look at. But again, when it comes to investing, tactical advantage is step one. You live there, or you used to live there, and you know the neighborhoods. You know somebody that lives there that you trust who can give you good current information. That comes before all the other data. If you don't have that, you're going to be the out-of-state distance investor who can fall for almost anything an agent says, because there are deals that people want to sell that local investors have been passing on for good reason, that those get sold to foreign, not foreign, but distance investors who don't have a clue of what the good neighborhoods are. I think Matt, the lumberjack landlord, talks about that. He invests in small towns, like 3 towns, population 45,000. Correct me if that's wrong. Where distance investors come in and buy the terrible stuff, and then a little bit later, Matt can just pick them up from them. REI trainer. Even though COVID has ruined a lot of vacation travel plans, at least we're fortunate that our country does have 4 seasons: snow, tropics, and a lot of land. Yeah. Oh, and because my memory, REI trainer, if you could type in, where do you live? Chester Williams. Zillow made the mistake of buying on expected appreciation, and it cost them a little north of $500 million. That is true. Zillow also made the mistake of relying on artificial intelligence, which it's fractal. So when you have small, minute decisions to make, things can look great. As soon as you get into an actual Google system, not so much. JS, appreciate your answers and your time. Thank you. Nope, I can answer every question that comes my way, and I'm glad you guys are taking the time to hang out tonight. I'm hoping that this information helps somebody, maybe 2 somebodies. JS Blast. Dion, got my first 2 duplexes this year. How can I scale faster next year? So this year you have the 2 duplexes. You should be getting rental income on your tax returns. Lenders will like to see that on 2. So I don't know if that's going to impact 2022 as much for debt to income ratio. I would recommend having year-long or longer leases, because as you talk to lenders, they might look at your debt to income ratio better if you have at least 3 months remaining on leases. So month-to-month leases don't do you as good in lenders' opinions. And when I first started, that confused me. I thought, why do they care? The lender's going to let me make a 30-year commitment because I have a tenant who's made a 3-month commitment. And then the lender said, well, we're not going to keep your loan, right? We're going to get paid to service it and collect the payments, but we're selling this loan as soon as it goes through. They care about 3 months. So longer leases will help you avoid life creep. These rental properties, hopefully they're getting the cash flow. That cash flow should go straight to the investing fund. Build up your reserves, but you have a fund that is for the next down payment. You need money for down payment, closing costs, immediate repairs, and reserves, right? So the faster you can get that, the more options it will open up to you. You can also start with more creative deal finding. Make sure you have more than one agent setting up auto searches. Talk to wholesalers. There are people that start doing mailers once they have a good idea of what they're looking for. I have not done any of that. All of my deals are straight from the MLS. So you have a couple of different options. Murph Dog. Dion is my financial planner. Perfect. Nice. He's mine too. I met the guy. I've been in a couple of videos with him. Know thyself first. I recently met the real estate CPA firm rep to discuss their service, and they are big on tax planning over tax preparation. Their high touch plans start at 3,300. It depends on the size of your portfolio and what they're doing for you. I mean, my first year of, as soon as I realized that there are different types of depreciation, I thought, yeah, I need a pro. Right? So there's somebody who's trained and educated is going to do my taxes. 16 rental units, W-2, running a nonprofit. All my taxes are done by a CPA. Cost me about $1,100 a year. So, um, pretty happy with how that's going. Alan, I know that you and Beardy the lumberjack self-manage, but do you know how much management companies typically mark up invoices? I'm not a fan of the tenant turnover fee, but understand the market. I don't. I know that there is a bit of a markup. You're paying your monthly fee, and as you scale up in units, that monthly fee should be able to be negotiated down. When you have 1 or 2 units, it's gonna be around 10%. At 16, the property managers that reach out to me are offering me 6%. So the more units you have, the more that percentage will scale down. You can ask them for an itemized list of what they charge for services. Each property management company will be different. Um, Yeah, and you've heard me talk. If you said the tenant placement fee is the problem, that's my problem with property management too. I want a property management company that is as terrified of tenant turnover as I am. I want them to hate it. And if they get paid to place a tenant, they don't hate it. Chester, does it matter whether to consider agents who are also REIs? So I talk about that a little bit at the beginning of this video. If 90% of real estate agents never own a rental property, there's not that many that are real estate investors out there too. I've worked with both and ask the real estate investing questions. Do they understand you focus on yield? You're not looking for curb appeal and which way the kitchen faces. You're looking for what will my return be? What is the likelihood of people wanting to rent this place? If you have a newer agent, one of the agents I was working with who's been my best agent so far that I've worked with, and then my last 3 deals have gone through him. When we started talking, he was brand new, like just finished training. So I asked questions like, "Which brokerage are you at?" He's at Keller Williams. They have a great onboarding process. So if they were with an agency that I know, that's fine. And then ask, who's on your team? Who's your mentor? Who are you going to be able to go to get answers to questions when I ask them if you don't know the answer? So I don't think it's important that they're a real estate investor. If they are a real estate investor, I don't see them as competition. That one that I was talking about that was brand new, he's also an investor. He buys small multifamily in the same footprint that I do. Neither one of us are buying the 400 deals that are going to pop up in the next year. We're buying 2 or 3. So that's not competition. Um, yeah. So it can't hurt if they're a real estate investor, but be careful. I have a friend who has over 30 rental units and he's super smart. He's completely financially free. He had 19 real estate agents working for him. He was running his own office, but he invested completely different than me. And his investing strategy worked great for him. He's never done small multifamily, and he's not really big on mortgages. He was usually save up the money, buy cash, save up the money, buy cash, do it totally different. The first 2 duplexes that he sent to me, that he told me as I was like looking at him as a mentor, and he said, "These are great deals. The prices are great. You can do this," because he didn't know the investing strategy. I made offers. Had they got accepted, they would have bankrupted me. That would have been the end of my investing. So just because somebody is a real estate investor does not mean they understand your market, your investing strategy, or what's working for you. So you date your agents, you date your lenders, you marry the properties. Make sure you're the one that's marrying them. JS, and I'll add on my properties, I have about 25 to 40% cash on cash return. So that's why I went with cheaper houses. I do find the cheaper houses cheaper houses in some areas, worse neighborhoods in some other areas have the better cash on cash returns. Um, my brother, like I said, he bought them with home equity line of credit. They were falling down. He did the work to fix them up. They were super cheap. That's the technical term for it. His cash on cash return is phenomenal. Like, yeah, he's never had to do the investing the way that I do. Chester, the understanding being real estate investing agents get what someone is looking for. Yeah. And so the agent might not be an investor, but they have to understand what you're looking for. Um, and for instance, the thing that matters to me is speed. This is a seller's market right now. The pendulum has swung way far over to the seller's side. I need to get my offers in before the seller knows that they're about to get inundated with a multiple over asking offers that might look more attractive than mine. They might not have sold a property in years, or they might have inherited and not know how this works. And if I can get my offer in quick, it can get accepted. We get the sunk cost concept going where they think they've already got an offer accepted, so those other offers don't matter. Uh, my agent has to know that speed matters to me more than anything. Sonali, can we start real estate investing in 40s? Is it too late? That is a great question. I made it to 40 without ever having $1,000 in the bank. I was a single parent with 3 kids and a lot of bad debt that I didn't know about until the divorce. At 48, I was bad debt free and work was completely optional for the rest of my life. So yes, absolutely. In your 40s is a great time to start. You might have some resources that you didn't have when you were in your 20s or 30s. You might have patience. You might have some other things. But I'll tell you one thing, you're in your 40s now. It's going to be easier for you to start in your 40s than in your 50s. If somebody's watching right now and they're in their 50s, it would be easier to start now than when you're in your 60s. It's that whole statement of the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is now, today. So nope, you're definitely not too late. TBS 24, nothing is too late. Great answer. REI trainer, I am currently in Virginia, Southwest Virginia, moved here from Charlotte, North Carolina, 5 years ago, looking for property in Roanoke, Virginia. All I know about Roanoke is the story of the whole village being taken out and disappeared. And I've been in Virginia a couple times. I worked in DC for a couple months years ago. It's beautiful in that area. Know thyself first. For the CPA comment above, how important is it to find the right person to file your taxes? I don't think I could stress it enough without being really sarcastic. Yeah, my opinion is they should understand real estate. They should understand the tax laws associated with real estate because it's very different than W-2 tax filing. So I wouldn't go to one of the big places where you walk in and they sit you down with whoever's there on a Tuesday and you just go, here H&R Block, here whatever one else one is out there. I would find a CPA. I would look for them now. I wouldn't look for them, February, March, or April in that time period because they're so busy. Nobody's taking on anybody new. And get to know them. Point out your position and see what their recommendations are. REI trainer, can't type today. Moved from Charlotte 1.5 years ago. Know thyself first. Welcome to Virginia. Yep. In the northern part of lowdown country. Awesome. Ladon. I'm probably saying that wrong. Michael Smith. Question. What do you miss about being a cop? Oh, I'm going to overshare. That's it's going to be oversharing. I enjoyed. This is weird. I know. When you're in an interview for a police officer and they go, "Why do you want to be a cop?" Well, I want to help my community. I'm one of those guys that likes catching people doing something they know they shouldn't, like theft or robbery or violence or whatever, and being a part of what stopped them. I miss being a part of that, being proactive and stopping things from happening. What I don't miss is something that almost made me cry. Spent years training and testing to get on with the police department, 8 years in law enforcement, lose the job because of the recession. And I thought, well, I'll just go back to driving a truck and I'll do that until things pick back up and then I'll get back on with the police department. And I went back to driving a truck and I came home and my daughter came to me and it was just a couple months in and she just got all teenage girly on me and said, she really loves that I'm not a cop anymore because I used to come home in such a bad mood. And now I come home laughing every day. And it was like that second, I was like, boom, yeah, I'm never going to be a cop again. So I don't miss that part. I don't miss that you can't hang it up at the door when you walk in. You bring all that with you. Everybody you're talking to every single day, it's the worst day of their life. Victim, perpetrator, doesn't matter. The reason they're talking to a cop is because life sucks. As a truck driver, I get to educate myself with podcasts. Running a truck driving school, I get to help people learn how to get a career. Running a nonprofit, I get to help people find jobs. I get to do this, helping people figure out how to make it to where they don't need a job. Yeah, so I don't miss how being a cop affected me. And now I couldn't take the pay cut. So, Michael Smith, question. What's an honest starting pay for a local driver? What driving situation job would pay the best without owning your truck? So owning your truck is not the way to wealth. Most people that own a truck lose. That if they're running a business, and if you don't know how to run it like a business, you fail. Get to 3 trucks, you might start making some money, but now you're running employees. Over the road pays crap. And every CDL school on the planet will try to trick you into doing that. They'll talk about sign-on bonuses and seeing the country and get paid. But the average over-the-road driver starts off at about $6 an hour. You're paid by the mile, so you're never actually compensated for overtime. That company doesn't even know when you hit 40 hours. You have a breakdown, you lose money. You sit at a dock, you lose money. Most companies that are dealing with truck drivers from out of state they just treat them terribly. So truck driving schools are usually not transparent, and they'll say, we can work with, and I'm not going to name any, but there are over-the-road companies that are not allowed on the property of our school, because what they'll do is the school gets paid to train somebody to drive a truck, and then the over-the-road company pays the school up to $1,300 for every person the school tricks into going over the road. So we don't do that. You want a local driving job, so find a school that will talk with local companies. If they try to convince you to go over the road, run off to the next school. Our actual company tagline at my school is "Be home every night," because local jobs start off more. Most local companies start off $25 to $29 an hour, so you're paid by the hour. You hit overtime, you get paid more. You're sitting in a dock waiting, you're getting paid by the hour. You have a truck breakdown, you're sleeping in your truck waiting for the mechanic, getting paid. You can be home with your family every day, and you can make a good wage. The average starting wage for a local truck driver I used to say it's about $72,000 a year. Now it's about $85,000. Wage inflation is impacting trucks like crazy. Local employers now have sign-on bonuses. We have one with a $15,000 sign-on bonus. Most average between $5,000 to $10,000 just to go to work there. So if you're looking at being a driver, my email, I'll put it in here. And I can tell you how to kind of vet the schools in your area and what companies to work for and what ones not to. Because on here, I'm not going to name some companies, but there are some that you definitely don't want to work for. There you go. TBS 24. Love the saying, date the agents, marry the property. Yep, I feel like I can relate that to almost any investment. Like, you marry the investment. It takes almost like a divorce to separate yourself from that, right? But to not work with that lender anymore, you just call a different one. So, Larry, if you're being peer pressured, considering on recycling capital, have you thought how many units you'll go up and still be able to self-manage? Kind of. I don't think I'm anywhere close to that. I think I could triple the number of units that I have and self-manage without even a noticeable difference in the amount of time it takes me. So I haven't had to consider that yet. I do look at how many units I can have and still use conventional residential lending. I like 30-year fixed rate debt, low interest. I'm at 6 mortgages now, so 4 to go. So those are things that I look at. I am looking at, if I recycle the capital, where am I going to put it to work? What kind of property am I going to find? That's what's making me do it. And I'm talking with Matt the Mortgage Guy's team. They've connected me with somebody local here. And so I'm looking at what it would take to do a cash out refinance on the house, or refinance a duplex that I have to a better rate. A couple of different options. John Williams, howdy. Michael Smith, question. How hard is it to get a commercial loan for rental without a job? Just retired early, but have nice nest egg, but don't want to pay cash. So it might take a larger down payment. The commercial loans, if they're looking at the property, so there is asset-based lending. I have a lender here, local to, I think they're in a lot of states, that will do asset-based lending on 2 to 4 unit. So normally commercial loans 5 units or more, or once you have 10 in your name. So I don't think that it's hard, because your income, your debt to income doesn't matter as much for that. You generally have more money down, worse interest rate. Michael Zuber has somebody that will do 30-year fixed rate on commercial. I haven't experienced that. Residential is 30-year fixed rate. So if you can find a lender And I would just call like Guild Mortgage, Fairway Mortgage, Matt the mortgage guy, and say, look, this is my situation. This is what I'm looking to do. Is it possible to get 30-year fixed? That's what I would be chasing, is 30-year fixed rate debt. I would want to do adjustable rate mortgage if at all possible to avoid that. Knock it on. I'll be 58 next month. You, Matt, and Mike have given me my second wind, and I have been doing it since 1979. Awesome. Awesome. Nice. Know thyself. Nice. REI trainer. Awesome. You're in a great area in your humble opinion. Know thyself. Okay. 90-ish, still self-managing with a W-2 lumberjack. Yep. So still doable. Okay. And we just hit the 3-hour mark or 2-hour mark. I don't know. I fell asleep halfway through this. I'm up for more questions. I don't have a timeline on this. I know it's getting to be like dark 30 where Matt's at. Any more questions for tonight? And I want to say 53 thumbs up. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. US Crane, Renee Collins. Are you also refinance properties on the hope, refinancing properties on the hope that you can take advantage of a market pullback by buying the dip? That is what Michael Zuber is doing. He's refinancing and pulling out the funds. And I think that's what Matt's doing too. I've just heard Mike say it. Holding the funds, looking for the pullback, and then making the good purchases. So I'm on a smaller scale looking at doing the same thing. And that's why Mike said if by 2024 he hasn't found those great deals, he's just going to take the money, write a check, pay off the loans. So yeah. Matt the lumberjack, crush the like board. This was great. Thank you. I appreciate it. And if you get bored, since you came in later, everybody, I started this video talking about some rent control chaos happening in St. Paul, where they enacted the strictest rent control I've heard of in the entire country. And they're shocked that contractors pulled out of deals that they were making. So now there's going to be even less units available there. Awesome. And then Tony, so you're in the Bigger Pockets cohort boot camp, right? Unless there's somebody with the exact same name that's in that group. Really appreciate the feedback and great content. All right. Until my next video. Thanks for coming to my Dion Talk. Except I saw a question pop up, and I'm going to look. Where are the maps behind you from? I think you mentioned it before, but couldn't remember. Okay. So this map behind me is from a book series called The Forgotten Realms, and there are about 400 authors that write in there. Then the map that's red and yellow is from a book series called Dragonlands. And I'm an avid reader, so I like to read. I like to listen to books too. But the maps do a couple of things. It softens the sound, so it doesn't sound all tinny and echoey in the room. And you guys don't know if I'm at home, at work, traveling, and I could take the maps anywhere and record anywhere. And it always looks the same. I have a traveling studio. So that's the purpose for the map. And then, yes. Cool. Well, hopefully that boot camp's going well. And if you have any questions in there, I mean, I think we only have technically one more week left, but we're going to go for 2. I'm going to show up. Michael Smith, in what situation would renting the rooms like a boarding house be better than living in one side of a duplex, triplex? If you can handle the extra time and energy that it takes to manage by the room, you're going to make more money renting by the room. You're going to have more turnover. If you're renting near a college, that's where by the room makes more sense. So it depends on your location and what is his name? Oh, I hate my brain. He lives right here in Seattle. He's been on Mike's channel. He's super smart when he talks. Oh, I can't believe I can't miss him. There's a guy, he's been on Bigger Pockets. He's been on Mike's channel. He lives right here in Seattle. He rents by the room, makes like $1.1 million a year. It's crazy. So by the room is the way to go. If you can handle the time commitment and the energy that it takes to manage by the room. It's totally different than renting long-term by the unit. Chester, this is awesome as always. Dion, I'm going to do a little more work in Michael Zuber's course. There's an offense. The cost goes up January. Yeah, the cost does go up pretty soon. Both Matt, the lumberjack landlord who's here, and me, we put content into that. We're in the Facebook group answering questions that come up too. So thanks, Ava. Have a good night. REI trainer used to work in St. Paul, 2000, 2001. Nice city, but surprised they are doing rent control. Crazy. Yeah. Thanks, Dawn. Thank you, Minna. John Williams. What do you do if you find an amazing deal but don't quite have the capital? This happened this week. Duplex popped up with 38% yield, was about 12K short of total cap needed. Look at seller financing the gap. So they carry a note for that second portion. If the lender's okay with it, that's one option. Partnering up, depending on your situation. If you find a deal that's good enough, sometimes that's the way you find the partner. Hard money, loan. No, hard money, that's not a good answer. Sorry, take that back. If I didn't have the money, private money. If you do borrow the money somewhere for the down low, the lender has to be okay with how much skin you have in the game and what your debt to income ratio becomes. And remember, when you find a great deal like that and you just can't make it work, you didn't miss your chance. You missed that chance. Keep saving. Those deals will come up again. And the more money you have saved up for down payment, closing costs, immediate repairs, and reserves, the more options you're going to have when they do. All right, trainer, have a fantastic evening. Great live stream. Thanks for sharing. Thank you. Thanks for hanging out. So, a cost of living. Have you thought of doing any Airbnb VRBO? Yes, I'm going to do that. I have most of my properties are small multifamily. I have a house and a triplex that is really a house and a duplex. If either of those houses ever open up and don't have a tenant, my next turnover, I'm going to do short-term rentals to try it out. I prefer long-term rentals because I still work a W-2. I still have 3 kids. They're grown up, but you'd think that would take less time than when they lived at home. It doesn't. And I run a nonprofit. So my goal is, time freedom, but I am going to try it so that I can have that experience to share here, more so than it's going to make more money. JS, thank you. Beverly, Todd Baldwin, that's exactly who I was talking about. Yes, and I don't know why my brain shut off because I'd actually really like to do some videos together with him. He's just articulate and super smart, has some great strategies. So, US train. Have you sold any of your single families to trade up 1031 into multifamily? If so, what motivated the transaction? No, I haven't sold anything. Buy and hold forever till death do us part. I have considered selling my single family house because the math says it would be the smartest thing to do, but it's paid off and it's rented to a Section 8 tenant at $2,200 a month. So while math says do this, peace of mind says don't. Yeah, so I haven't done that yet. What would motivate me to do it is if I knew I had if I had properties, if I could find properties where I knew the return was so good, it would justify losing the asset to buy the new one or taking out a loan to lose the cash flow to buy the new one. That's when I would do it. So it depends on the deals I can find more than the deals that I have. What would make you want to build? So building makes sense when prices go too high, demand is still high, and the cost of building, the time, the burn rate for the months you carry it while it's happening, the permitting, the headaches to go through make more sense. So this year, it almost would have made more sense to build. The pandemic caused material costs to triple. So build cost with buy cost went up at the same time. So all the extra work that goes into build doesn't make sense to me. Um, I have a friend who is buying duplexes that they will build. So he's buying the land with the company that will build it. And then once it's built, he'll have a rental. Different strategy than what I do. So it makes sense to him to do that because then they have a new property. But I think that for me, it's easier to cash flow with a 10 to 30-year-old building, or buildings in my area that already exist. So I haven't had to do it yet. Thanks for the feedback. Thank you. High cost of living. You're very busy outside of real estate. Honestly, is because you enjoy your safety net from real estate. What would cause you to focus more on one or the other? I always overshare. I work at the school that I'm at. And if the owners of the company are watching, it's my moment of transparency. I don't need the job. I make 3 times what I could possibly spend to live from my real estate. I was an instructor at that school making $17 an hour, and I had an idea. I pitched the idea to them because I had real estate as a safety net. And I thought, if I lose this job, I'll live. I wasn't even there yet. I was just starting to look for duplexes. Like, I had the mental map laid out of doing this. So I knew I can find any job and I could get to reach financial freedom. But I had an idea that I thought would grow the school. So I took it to the owners and I pitched it to them. And they gave me a chance. The chance no one in my life has ever given me. They looked at me and they said, "That's a great idea," because they bought the school. So they're new owners. They had never worked in transportation. They don't have CDLs. They didn't know trucking. They just wanted to buy a school and help people get jobs. I pitched my idea and they said, "We'll try that." Sure. We'll try it for 6 months. If it works, you're the company president and you will run everything. If it doesn't work, you're fired and somebody else will run the place. And I was like, that's great. Because if it didn't work, I had a path to financial freedom, but I knew this idea was going to work. So the idea worked. It grew the company from 6 staff with 1 location to 60 staff we're opening our 5th location now. They made me the company president. They gave me 10% ownership of the company. They've given me this shot. So as long as they own the company, I'm working here. I'm going to pay them back for the rest of my life. And I feel like I have 60 staff that work for me, that it's my responsibility to make sure the company is soluble enough to make sure that they stay employed. And we get to train about 2,000 people a year to find good local driving jobs. And the nonprofit gets to help people find non-driving jobs. So I enjoy the work. So I wouldn't want to do it for free, but I technically kind of would. I think I love the statement when people say, "I love my job so much I would do it for free." My thing is, I love this job so much, it's the only job I will ever have again in my life that I will do for money. If this job ever went away, it'd never work again. It'd all be real estate. That's what would shift me to 100% real estate. So hopefully that answered it. And hopefully it wasn't too much oversharing. TBS 24. How do you plan, or do you plan to teach your kids the business? Mental Jedi mind tricks. Make a YouTube channel. Have them watch a couple of them. Make them funny. My son comes up to me and asks me questions on concepts I had to research for 3 days to make a video on, and he understands it. And then he's asking me questions. So that's my way. And I've tried to never push anything on my kids. Like, I ran a martial arts studio for like 15 years. My son took wrestling, so he went his own way. So if they want to get into real estate, great. At some point, they will inherit it, and hopefully they've been paying attention. But yeah, so I like to ask them questions of, have you seen this Meet Kevin video or this Graham Stephan video? Because those were channels that appealed to younger audiences, and then that would spark conversations with my kids. So if you have teenage kids, those are a couple of channels. With Graham Stephan, I would look for anything 3 years old or older. With Meet Kevin, I would look for anything that doesn't say stimulus in it, and share those videos with your kids. John, Texas. I came in late. Sorry if I missed, but can you talk about why you want to buy $1 million property? What is the strategy? So Michael Zuber, for One Rental at a Time, often says that you can easily go broke buying cheap, right? Or not easily. He says you can go broke buying cheap. my first few years, I tried to buy cheap. I looked for duplexes I could afford, right? So what I can afford was cheap. And once I was investing for 5 to 6 years, I started buying more expensive properties and the yield scaled. And I was like, wow, that place gets a better yield, a higher percentage of a bigger amount. So in my videos, I often say, I wish my properties cost more money. And I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm saving because the income snowball has kicked in. So I'm saving money, more money than I thought I would ever see in my life, just in the savings account, let alone what's happening with the properties. And I have a paid off property that Matt and from the lumberjack landlord and Mike have talked me into taking a line of credit again, a cash out refinance to take that money, put it together. I want to buy a fourplex that costs over $1 million, as long as I can find one that gets my same yield or better than what I shoot for on my cheaper properties, because 10% of a $250,000 cost to acquire is more attractive to me than 10% of a $100,000 cost to acquire. $10,000 a year raise or $25,000 a year raise. That's the mentality. And yes, if I find a really good deal that's cheaper, I'm probably going to use my down payment to buy it because I'm not stupid. If I find a great deal, I'm going to go for it. But my goal is to kind of shift my search now to just, I want a fourplex, townhome style, so they're side by side, not over under. I want each unit to have a garage, and it's going to be where the rents make sense for the price. That's where that came from. Yep. And that's the type of $1 million property for TBS 24. The cost of living, great story. Thank you. TBS 24, perfect advice for Stephen and Kevin searches. Yes, thank you. Graham Stephan is great. When he was an investor and he was saying, here's how house hacking, here's how, like, all of his instructional videos are awesome. So, and younger people will watch them. Meet Kevin too. But once your channel gets that big and you start thinking, what does the bigger crowd want to hear? What will entertain them? Then they start going with that. My thing is I'm trying to teach. And to teach somebody, you don't give them information. You give them enough data to where they draw a conclusion. Once they draw a conclusion, it makes a long-term memory. And so that's the point of each one of my videos, is what will make you think. Like my video that's coming out this Thursday is, there are so many videos out there where people go, here's things the rich do that the poor don't. Things the poor do that the rich don't. Things that rich people teach their kids that the poor don't. So I made a video on things that the wealthy do and the poor do that are almost the same. And it's the almost that makes them wealthy or poor. So it's enough information to make your brain go, what? Right? Just that question that comes up. So when you watch the video, you'll get just enough information of things that wealthy and poor do almost the same, that by the end you'll be like, wow, people really aren't that different. It's just one person chooses this and one person chooses this that can actually have an impact on where you end up. And that's what Graham Stephan used to have. So I hope every now and then he comes up with one of his like original content type videos, and that'd be great. Do you own property in Colombia? No. In Colombia, I had a friend who was teaching English there. So my brother and I went there to visit and basically had like a guided tour for a month. Got to be the English speaking guests at the college he was teaching English at, and interact with the class and try to speak conversational English. Went up to Pereira and was there for a while. I never went to Medellin. That would have been the place I want to go, but we went to Cartagena, and it's a beautiful country. I don't even know if foreigners can own there, so I didn't look into it, but definitely going back. So thank you, TVS 24. I appreciate that. Cool. I'm going to hang out for a few more minutes if there's any more questions. As my voice slowly fades. And what's funny, Jimena, is I thought I spoke Spanish. I grew up in Southern California, and my first job was when I was 8. I was working in the onion fields next to my mom, and I learned okay Spanish. I went to Colombia, and I do not speak Spanish. I couldn't understand a word. So it was just, yeah, that was eye-opening for me. Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for hanging out tonight. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.